We are red. Red is on.
Okay, good evening and welcome to Thursday, November 21st, 2019 Selectmen's Meeting. You all stand to the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, so we've got a few things on the agenda. We've got some residents or onlookers here. I'm going to start right out with Lawrence here from Avatar, so we can discuss the Tilton revaluation. And
Do you want me to come up to
yeah,
the...
come on up and get a little microphone so that Gail can hear and we'll take minutes.
You're on vacation, huh? So I'm here at your pleasure, really, just to give you an update of where we are with the reassessment, and then available for questions that I'm sure you may have. So we had turned everything over to the board, and obviously the new values were used to set the tax rate. And once tax bills went out, it generated a tremendous amount of phone calls to the town hall. So I had a full day of meetings with taxpayers today, and I have another full day of meetings with taxpayers in December. And as I've explained to many of the taxpayers at this point that are concerned with their assessment, is the only mechanism for any changes for 2019 would be through the abatement process, to provide information with regards to market value and comparable sales, so that we can look at that. We're not perfect, but I'm always here to listen to anyone. So if there is some valid concerns, there is some market data, there is anything, that process is available, and we will avail ourselves to that and make sure that we review all that information thoroughly and bring that back to you as a board for consideration. But by and large, I didn't get beat up too bad today, just a little bit, but not too bad. It was a good day, and just give some people, taxpayers, an opportunity to meet with me and discuss how values were arrived at, look at some of the comparable properties that we looked at, and just explain the overall, assessment to them. I see that Peter is signing some of those abatement dispositions. Those are all, as some of you may or may not remember, during the update year we end up sometimes with negative tax bills. And what that means is those are overpayments for one reason or another, so that the total tax was less than that first issue bill. For example, there were a couple of veterans that the tax credit didn't get put on for the first bill, and so that their veterans tax credit exceeds their total tax due. So if they paid their first bill, they're entitled to a refund for that, because the veterans credit covered their tax bill. The other one that there's quite a few properties in there is the Country Meadows development where they put in the new homes. And part of the road had not been continued through yet. It had not been fully developed. So when we first assessed it for the first issue tax bill, we had assumed that had gone all the way through, and it had not been completed as of April 1st. So those assessments were reduced in reflection of that, and that results in a slight overpayment on those properties, and there's probably a dozen or so of those. And then there was one other today. I came across a veteran's tax credit that should have been put on and was not, so I processed that abatement as well. So that's kind of it in a nutshell, and I know you guys have questions for me, so.
Warren, I wonder if you could just speak to the ratio, the 98.7, 98.8, whatever it is, and explain,
Sure.
Share with them what you shared with me today.
Absolutely. So our goal is to assess property at 100% of market value as of April 1st, 2019. With the number of sales that we have in Tilton, we did that relatively early in the year. We had done sales analysis and field review back in May. And then we sent out preliminary value notices June-ish, late June, and held hearings in July. So we still had a few more months of sales transactions that have continued to come in. So while our goal was 100% of market value, we've continued to see sales come in that are above what properties were assessed as of April 1st. So still seeing an appreciating market to some degree, and that's why that ratio is slightly under the 100%. What else did you want to go? I'm trying
I
to
think,
mentally go down my list.
well, we had one selectman ask about the one property with the sprinkler system fireworks, I think. It was Winnisquam Auto. I think there was some.
Oh, yes, you had emailed me about that. The Winnisquam Auto property is a mixed-use property, so we have the building of the house that's on there, and we didn't have the garage picture on there. We normally take new pictures while we're out doing cycled inspections, and we didn't have an additional picture on that one.
That one, it wasn't that the garage was missing, it didn't even show the asphalt that had been added. It didn't show the transformation. If you're talking about Auto West, across from Hampton Inn.
I believe that's not the one I was talking about, the one you were talking about. Yes, I believe so.
Is that the one you're
I
referring
think
to?
so, I think so.
Yeah, because the picture that, unless it's changed, that was on a week ago, was a very, very old picture. It didn't show any of the updates when it transformed from a single-family home to the business.
Right.
Which essentially is, you couldn't see that it was all asphalted for parking or anything.
Yeah,
It still was a single-family home.
it's right,
picture.
it's still got that picture on there, correct. The picture needs to be updated on that. I think that property is flagged to go back for April 1st as part of the new construction, but I will confirm that. And the fireworks property, I had met with the taxpayers just after the abatement period early in 2019, concerned about their assessment. And we had talked about some of the improvements made to the property or over improvements made to the property because of the type of business it was. So there was an adjustment made to their building to reflect some of that super adequacy that wouldn't necessarily transfer to a different user than the type of property that's in there now. So that was the reduction that was seen on that property. Generally speaking, commercial properties didn't appreciate at the same percentage that residential properties appreciated, so that's where we're seeing a shift in the tax burden to some degree. If all things were equal and everybody's property went up 30%, and everything was equal and there wasn't changes in the spending, then the tax rate would drop proportionally, and that didn't happen. And that's largely a shift in that residential versus commercial property in town, part of that anyway.
The burden being more on residential than commercial, and the reason that is because of the market.
Right, as properties have been selling, the residential real estate market in town from the last update in 2014 till today has seen significant appreciation, and we've seen that more so in the residential market than we have in the commercial market.
So what's the makeup commercial to residential?
I'm asking that off the top of my head. I don't know off the top of my head.
The other thing is, could we get a report showing pre and post for commercial, residential? I'd also like to break it out to waterfront, raw land, I don't know, any other categories, just to see which areas are getting hit.
All right, so an old to new
Yeah.
with ratios for commercial,
Commercial, residential, waterfront, and then raw land, yeah.
Sure.
Anyone else want to add to it?
It's a good start. Right
Yeah.
there.
And Tim has some of that information. I gave him that file so that he could break it down and look at that, and that may have been where some of the questions initially had come from. But I know I had gotten that information from him. But any of that information, it's available for anybody. It's,
Yeah.
you know, it's readily available, so I can get that information and
Right, thank you.
email it to Jeannie and she can distribute.
If you don't have any more questions for Lauren, I thought maybe you might want to ask any questions you might have about the contract.
I have some questions.
Oh, okay, go ahead, sorry.
So, through this 5-year contract that we're coming to the end of, every year you go out and assess a portion of properties. And I don't know what this one is now.
We would go out and look at a percentage of properties as
Right.
part of the cyclical, the data verification.
For
Yeah.
example, in 2016, you visited 673 parcels. And,
That was in her old contract.
Mhm.
right,
I've got that here somewhere.
so that was in 1 year. If that's approximate of the parcels that you visit each year to update the assessments, why did the town take such a hit in this townwide assessment? The percentage that the properties went up in value was huge. The
Two
economy
different
didn't-
things.
I mean, the sales didn't just all of a sudden increase in 2019 or 18.
No. Two different things. So we're out doing that cyclical inspections and we're collecting data. That's all we're doing. So we didn't bring anybody in that percentage of town to 100% of market value. We just correct the data. So if they demolished a shed, we would take it off the record. If we went to their property and they put on a new roof, we would pick up the new roof. We verify the measurements are accurate. We verify everything that's on the property. We do not bring them to market value. So in 2014 was the last time everyone was at market value. So the change that we're seeing is from 14 to 19, not from last year to this year, but it's a 5-year change in the real estate market. So that cycled inspection process is just to continually make sure that data is accurate. So as long as we always have a database that is accurate, we can easily do an update anytime we wanted to do an update. So if the market tanked, we start going into a recession, and in 2 years we're at 140% of market value, or there's something drastic and the board wants to react, we have a good database that we could do an update and bring things to 100% of market value at any time. That's not what we're currently doing.
So if that was the case, and I have a question, a few years ago, and it wasn't during the last assessment year, the values on Main Street dropped. How did that happen?
That was as part of an abatement and appeal that caused us to look at that as compared to the whole general level of assessment. So our goal is always to bring everything's got to be fair and equitable. So if one class of property is at 80% of market value and everything else is at 100, we have to bring that 80% up. And if something's at 120 and everything is, it's to bring everything relative without having big changes. And now there's never going to be one number and everyone's always going to be at 80% or 90%. There's always going to be more realistically a range, but when they get outside of that range as compared to one another, that's not fair and equitable anymore, and that's why we had to address those properties, because they were significantly overassessed relative to the general level. So not quite a statistical update because it wasn't a whole class of property. It was an area of town, and we see that sometimes. But that's all that was
And then my
Market
last
correction.
question is, so all the phone calls that I've received in the past 2 weeks, which is considerably huge, I'm going to say 98% of them said that their property, as far as they know, was never visited by the assessor, and the assessors never went inside their properties. They were, unless they went in on their own, what was commented. So Were percentages used, or were properties actually gone to?
Every property in town was visited, not in 19. Every property was visited over that proceeding. We did a percentage each year, so we visited every property,
Okay.
measured, attempted to inspect. I can't force anyone to let me in their property if they don't want to. But they would have got a follow-up letter requesting them to set up an appointment to do an interior inspection. And then during 19, when we did the update, we did a full parcel by parcel field review where we drove and looked from the outside of every single property in town.
But you didn't go into any of them?
No, we would have collected that data over the prior 4 years.
Okay, but I can tell you my property, for example, I've never received a card. You have been in my property and probably since 14.
We've been to your property multiple
I'm
times.
fine, but I've never had a card.
We would have gotten a letter to set up an interior inspection.
No, I didn't. But I'll take that back because I have a couple of addresses. So if somebody's property was looked at 5 years ago and their data updated, you would still use that data? Well, this would be the 5th year, so the data would be 4 years old
Correct.
to do that assessment.
Mhm.
So you'd have to make assumptions on what the inside was like. And then those properties that you hadn't visited, and I know a lot of people don't let you in, well, I shouldn't
Right.
say a lot, but there are those that
No,
just
a lot don't. It's
refuse
it's
you
probably gotten
access.
worse.
refuse you access.
It's estimated.
You have to make an assumption.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you.
Joe or anybody else? Is he there?
I'm done. My only statement, comment is, actually I did hear from one person whose taxes went down. And everybody that I talked to are paying significantly more in some cases. And you have all the data to verify this and to answer their questions as to why. I'm assuming. I
So,
mean, you do.
absolutely. So, we had sent everybody in town a notice of their value. We held informal hearings. And we reported that information back to you in the USPAP report as well. We had very few people avail themselves of that informal hearing process. So, my comment has been very frankly to a lot of taxpayers. So you got your notice, this was your value, and you weren't concerned with the value. But now you've gotten your tax bill and now you're concerned. So I don't know how much of it is that the value is inaccurate and how much is a concern about the increase in
You have
taxes.
copies of all the correspondence and lists of who you've said what to and so forth.
The preliminary notices, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. We also sent you a copy of all of that
I
information.
don't pretend to be an assessor, but I'm legally, I'm the assessor. We're the assessors. And we have contracted you to do this. And I know that these tax bills have hurt people I know.
Mhm.
And I just want to make sure that, like you said, fair and equitable, that it is fair and equitable.
Absolutely.
I have no doubts from your past performances. I'm
And as
concerned.
yeah,
for the
absolutely, absolutely. And you know, I'm a taxpayer as well, not in Tilton, and but not far over. I have a high tax bill as well, so I feel the pain. And as I said, as I started out, we're far from perfect, you know, and if we've missed the mark on something and something is brought to light through this abatement process, we'll be the first people in here bringing that to your attention. Always have and always will. As long as I'll continue to do assessing, I will do that.
One reason the residents may not have appealed it when it first came out was a lot of us were under the assumption the assessment goes up, the rate drops, the net effect is it's a zero out. So I think all of a sudden when they're getting 20+% increase, that's the big sticker shock.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of that is a direct result of that kind of shift from commercial to residential. Yeah.
I think, speaking from a personal experience, not having to have owned a property within the last 5 years, this would be our first 5-year group. Our assessment value went up a little over $65,000, doing nothing to it at all. And so when the letter came out with the value going up, I immediately contacted the number on the letter that came out to us. In all fairness to Lauren and her team, it was quite the education that I got on what was of value and what wasn't. And having nothing, absolutely no improvements to the building, and saying that it's now worth $65,000 more than what it was hard for me to imagine what could possibly increase this value. And there were a couple of inequities on the tax card that were corrected, and I then shortly after our meeting, our hearing, if you call it a hearing, it was adjusted slightly for the inequities, but the wealth of knowledge that I gained from that was invaluable, so I will have to say that. And I anticipated that there was going to be some type of increase, but my heart did not anticipate the amount.
I hear you.
So, that being said, that's all I have to say.
Anybody else?
I just have one kind of clarification for myself. So I understand if somebody has a question on the assessed value of the property, that's going to have to be an abatement.
Right.
But if somebody finds information that's incorrect on the card, they can come in and point it out and have it corrected. So
So,
they also have to file an abatement.
two things. So if someone brought in something and said, I don't have 2 bathrooms, I have 1, and we can verify it as data entry, or got entered as 22 and it should have been 2. If someone walks in the door and gives us that information, we will take that, we would give the information. But any correction for 2019, the only mechanism to change that would be through the abatement process. So if you just want me to correct it, it will get corrected going forward. If you expect something for 19, it has to be.
So it would be a
through the-
2-step process.
Correct.
In the time, and there's a limit in time for the abatement process,
March
correct?
1st.
Yes, abatements have to be filed by March 1st.
I just
and
wanted
that's
that to be-
absolutely, and that's not a town guideline, that's a state guideline and, or state law that requires they be filed by March 1st.
Do we
In
have any
hand or by
plans online?
postmark.
I don't know if they're online, I have them and I've been sending them, handing them out.
So they're not online, but you have them. I couldn't hear that, so.
I'm sorry, I don't know if they are online. I do have them in the office and electronically, so when people ask for them, I send them right away, or if they come in, I give them.
It's a state form, so the Department of Revenue and the Board of Tax and Land Appeals on their website as well have them. But I will talk to Tim and see if he could put the form on there.
I could ask them to do that.
Sure.
Yeah, that would be nice if we could have it on the website.
Yes. And maybe the explanation of the 2 parts. If they find something incorrect, make sure they understand.
Yeah,
If they want a monetary return,
right.
it still has to be abated.
So I have a question. If somebody is questioning the market value, the fair market value, what type of information would you need to see in order for them to do that?
Some comparable sales, if they've recently refinanced and have an appraisal. Sometimes they've looked to market at their property and they've talked to a local realtor and they have a CMA, comparative market analysis, any information, most taxpayers don't know what they're looking at, so whatever they can provide for information. Things, and the application is pretty clear that shouldn't make statements like my taxes are too high or my assessment's too high without some foundational. But we're not asking anybody to be an expert at this at all by any means. We understand most people don't understand that. If you have a home that is of similar size to yours and is consistently, your assessments have been similar along the way and now there's a range, that sometimes is an indication that something has gone awry. So whatever market evidence that they have or even assessment comparison evidence they have, we would look at that as well.
Is there any more questions from our
One more.
team?
Veterans tax credit, have we resolved that for the one that's been in touch with you?
Yes, and, yes.
Okay.
Anything else
We did respond.
from the people at the select board and team? So I have reason to believe that most of the people that are here tonight are for tax reasons, and they might have some questions, so maybe we
You
have
have to see us?
Yeah, we're not that popular. So maybe there's some questions if people could ask.
I will pick up my seat, but if they want to come up, then I'd be happy to stay in.
Well, I think we can discuss and then go back to the contract. Roy, he's got your coffee for it.
Oh.
There you go.
Listen, you brought me coffee too, it's not coffee. It's just a coffee.
Oh, that's true, I did.
It's just a coffee.
You're right.
But thank you very much.
So does anybody have any questions? You know, I think we hit some of the spots that, to help you out, that if you do want to file for an abatement, you have till March 1st. It's the value, you can get some information on comp values, market values, and stuff like that. And Lauren's available, and she's willing to help you, you know, tell you what you need to bring to her and set up appointments. We have appointments, we had them today. We've got another round. Is that all scheduled out in December, or there are still openings?
No, there are none left in December, and we're starting in January.
So there'll be, you know, schedule an appointment for January, so that gives time to get information gathered together and do that.
And they don't need to meet with me necessarily unless they have questions. I mean, anybody can file that abatement, and that will start the dialogue as well, provide phone number, email contact, and, you know, because I know it's tough, I'm not here every day, so whatever information can be provided as soon as they get that abatement, it'll start the dialogue.
Mr. Chairman, I think a lot of the folks here may be here for the 6 o'clock appointment. So,
Question, is it, we can ask questions of Lauren or only the board?
You can ask questions.
Okay, just a couple, land values, we heard commercial was lowered. What was the land, do we know what percentage land value went down? I have 60 acres next to me that's residential, that went down $20,000. My land went up 20,000, so I was just kind of curious how we look at land.
I don't know on a percentage basis what that is, but vacant land was lower than improved land would be, based on what was selling in town. So, we don't have a tremendous amount of vacant land activity, but what has sold and what is currently marketed has been pretty low. But on a percentage basis, I don't know that off the top of my head, but it sounds like I'm gonna be putting that together for the board, so,
Yes.
we can get that information.
And then for commercial, there are assumptions for residential, obviously, and I did meet with the folks in the summertime to go over my house. And I agree with Pat, it was very educational. Didn't make me happy, but it was still educational. But from a commercial standpoint, the assumption being made there is that what's available for sale in town, are we looking at rents as well? Because I'm sure rents didn't go down probably for commercial real estate. Are we looking at Main Street versus what's on the other side where Tanger is? How do you value the commercial side?
There is kind of a natural progression in value, and it's not something that we kind of pick and choose. It's based on what property is selling for, what property could rent for. You know, exit 20 obviously is a lot more valuable than on the Franklin town line. We look at all available data. So we do have some commercial sales data. We had some commercial vacant land sales throughout town, and we look at rental information when we can get it. The rental information is a lot harder to come by. It's confidential information. It doesn't have to be shared. We try to get it when we can get it, but it's not often available. So, you know, unless property is being marketed and that information is being advertised, it's harder to come by. Although I fight annually to try to get it at the legislature, but right now that's still an uphill battle. But
we'll continue to try that, to make sure that that's an even playing field of all properties. So we look at all approaches to value.
So would it be harder to value commercial than residential? It sounds like it would be.
I don't know if harder is the word. We may not have as accurate information as far as what properties are renting for. With that being said, we often see them listed for sale, and we will see them when they're listed for a lease and when they close. So we do have that information. We just don't have the whole picture as far as expenses, but cap rates and area income, we do have that information.
With vacancy rates and things like that.
Absolutely. Yep.
Go ahead.
Hi.
You can say who you are, that's good.
Oh, I'm Bob Yanity. I live at Ridge Road. We moved here in July, and we never got any information about what you were just discussing, letters in the mail to show you if you wanted to do anything about the taxes, and here's the rate and what not. We moved here with the assumption that the taxes were as quoted. Stated that's what it was. They have now gone up where it has completely kicked us out of our budget. We can't stay here anymore. So in the interim, we had filed for a VA exemption. Now, the VA exemption that we filed for was taken in New York, taken in Florida, taken in Loudon, New Hampshire. The same material given to 3 different places were accepted. We never questioned it was accepted. We furnished it here, and it was denied. But it was the same information that we gave to the 3 other areas that they had accepted it. And how could it be accepted and then declined here? If every other place has accepted it, and it was stated to us this, that, and the other thing, which we understood. So we reapplied back to the armed services. Waited months, finally got an email that it will take anywhere from 18 to 24 months to get what we needed, because they were going to reevaluate it, go over it again, and see what they come up with. But in the interim, I can't understand, we can't understand why here it wasn't approved. Do you have an answer for that?
Well, not knowing the exact circumstances, and I'm not sure if there are things that you'd like to discuss in non-public or, their
Oh, it
personal
doesn't matter.
information.
It doesn't matter.
But the thing would be is to look at the differences between the 2 applications, and perhaps there is a difference in the applications, and look at our application versus the others and see why there would be a difference.
Well, we
But-
furnished everything that was, oh, I'm sorry.
Well, Brad Walker, I'm the one who applied for the government discount, and I have an honorable discharge, and I have the form called DD-256. I was told, due to the fact I didn't have a DD-214, that I couldn't be accepted for the discount. But they're both honorable discharges. So then I went and wrote to the Army, like Bob said, and I said, there's an 18 to 24 months delay on that. I mean, I was in the Army 6 years, I was on call for 6 years, so, and I also was approved for a VA mortgage twice in New Hampshire, so I figured, since the town of Loudon accepted the papers that I offered them, I figured any other town in New Hampshire would, and Tilton did not. So right now, I'm gonna have to wait close to a year and a half from the Army to see what they can do for me. I was wondering if, talking to the selectmen, they could discuss it and see what you can do for us.
And in my eyes, I feel, and this is not just for Tilton, but throughout the nation, if you're serving in the armed forces, no matter how long, for whatever reason, every veteran should be able to be entitled to getting a discount on the taxes. It's almost like, excuse me for saying the word, this is the only word I can think of, discrimination. Not on your part, but on certain people's parts, you didn't fall into this category. So therefore, you're not going to get it, even though you had 6 years or 4 years or 30 years, and you're a life member of whatever service there is. So I think that should also be taken into consideration, the time, the effort, everything that an armed service person has done for their country. And not just say, oh, you didn't fall under that category, but you fell into everything else. but you're not gonna get it for that.
I think we'll look at it. Go ahead,
Mr.
Jean.
Chairman, I did meet with these gentlemen earlier today and had this discussion, the difference between a DD 214 and DD 256, which is what he has. He did point to Loudon, and I expressed to them that I would reach out to Loudon and get that information and then bring that back to the selectmen, because ultimately it would be the selectmen who make that decision. And this is the first time this has ever come up.
Not here, not between the 256 and, it is between the 256 and the 214, it is, but we've had a couple since I've been a selectman that they've been honorably discharged, and there's been a little glitch as to why we have not honored the veterans' credit because of, because of where they served or where they did not serve, or if they didn't serve, and I don't believe in it, I'm sorry, I feel that if they're a veteran, they're a veteran and they should get the credit, that's fine.
Doesn't
Take
the
on it,
state
but-
law set
Thank you.
what is required?
Right,
Right.
the select
To
board
qualify.
has the authority under the law to follow the law when it comes to credits and exemptions. The taxpayer did not qualify under the guidelines by the law, so the board doesn't have any authority to grant that. If the taxpayers are aggrieved with that, the only mechanism would be to file an appeal to the Board of Tax and Land Appeals. But you don't have the authority to grant when they don't qualify, and you don't make the guidelines, it's the state law. Not that I disagree, all veterans should get, I don't disagree with that, but I don't make that law, so that's gotta go through the legislature.
How is it that Loudon can do it and we can't?
Thank you.
They might have made
How
a
could
mistake.
Florida do
They
it? How could
erred.
New York do it?
Okay, so if they,
That's what I'm gonna find out.
got it, all right.
And
We're
the
gonna
other
look
two
into it.
areas that we lived in, New York especially, which is tight as a witch's you know what, they allowed it. And they're the strictest state that we've ever come across. But because, as you say, it's government, the selectmen had the choice to approve it, and they did. Same with Loudon, same with Florida. They all had the option to go and say, yes, here it is, yes, you did this, but there's one discretion, but we will overlook that because you followed every other part of that criteria. So if they're going against government rules and regulations, how do we know that? We're just getting the yes and the no.
Well, I can tell
Jamie's gonna look
you,
into that and find out why, and I think and I'm sure the whole select board feels that people who serve this country are deserving. And
I think
we
they-
have to see, what we have to do in order to follow the law, because we can't just give them up and commit it.
No,
So
we don't
that's
expect
unlawful.
you to do that, but
So-
we're just
Jamie will
confused.
get right on that and find out. Thanks for, pointing it out, because
Okay. And the one thing I have to say is, right, there's a state law, but the selectmen of Tilton, you're the ones that make decisions for this town of Tilton, for the residents who live here. So I feel that you're the ones that should make the decision, whether or not the state law says one thing or another. This is a town that you live in.
We can't.
I understand that, but you have to understand that we
Break the law.
can't break the law.
No,
But this is something that, legislators and that should be talking about. If, perhaps
Right.
it's legal in New York, but it's not in New Hampshire, this is something that should be brought before the state and that.
and if anybody's gonna get to the bottom of it, it's going to be Jeannie Forrester, who believes in veterans, who is a senator, who's going to bring it forward from our town to the legislation if it needs to be changed. She's gonna do it. I have all the faith in the world that she's gonna be the one to spearhead
we
this.
appreciate that.
So-
The other thing I wanted to say, we had asked, other than the VA exemption and your income, was there any other criteria that you could fall under to abate your taxes? And we were told no. So how could we possibly get an abatement form to fill out when there is nothing else to do? I don't know if I'm
Well,
explaining
we give out
myself.
abatements for people for age, for disabilities, for
Right,
any
but
of,
we were only told those were the two things only to do, and there was nothing else to do.
so in Tilton, we offer abatements for
Elderly.
elderly,
veterans.
veterans, and disabled.
Disabled.
So if any of those, you think that you might cover for any of those,
Well, I wish we were told that other one, because
Yeah.
we weren't.
and then come right in. It's not too late, though. You know, you can, you
Until
have
April
till
1st.
March 1st.
March 1st, I take it that.
Yeah, so there's time for that, and,
Well, the other one is 18 to 24 months to hear from the Army again, the government, because that's how swamped they are with situations like this. So we might as well just skip ahead 2 years.
stay right on it. Stay
Well,
right on it. Don't,
We called through 8
Yeah.
different agencies, and we gave the names when we sent in our information.
Mhm.
And it shows who we called, and each department they said to go to go. Finally, we went to the one that said, yeah, you're okay. And that's why New York, Florida, and Loudoun agreed to it, with every piece of paper that was presented to them. I'm sorry, but that
Yeah.
gets me really annoyed to some extent that what works for one doesn't work for the others. And that's all I have to say, I'm sorry, but thank you for your time.
Yeah. Anybody else have anything?
Thank you.
That's it, Chief?
Lauren, did you want to speak to the Tilton School agreement?
Oh, yes, I'm glad you brought that up. While I'm back up at the microphone, our agreement with the school expired in August of this year. And when we first, I don't know if you all remember, but
Yeah, I do.
That was the one who brought it up.
yeah, good.
Yeah.
So when we entered into that agreement, it was after some battle, and the goal was, we had said 5 years ago when we entered into that agreement that we wanted to be more proactive in 2019, so that we didn't wait till bills came out and abatement and
We approached them months ago, right?
oh yeah, months and
Months
and
ago.
months.
Months
So
ago.
that information has been provided, so we revalued all the properties and provided all of the information to the school at that time. We did not hear back for quite some time. And I finally did hear back, and it was literally like the day before we were going to MS1. So the whole goal was that we were going to be more proactive to avoid that issue, and we're right back in the same situation that we were in 5 years ago. So currently we have no agreement with the school. The properties were all valued, they were properly notified of the value, there was some dialogue, but we still do not have an agreement, and I'm not sure how the board wants to proceed with that. We left everything kind of in the school's hands, and we really haven't had any response back, but.
Have they indicated wanting to work with us for an agreement?
Lauren and I went
Yep.
toward the site. Everything seemed fine. Followed up. And, so yes, I just don't think it doesn't seem to be a priority for them. And I mean, we did, on our part, I think we did our part. So I just wanted you to all be aware of it, or we wanted you to be aware of it. And really, in talking with Lauren today, the only one it appears to benefit is Tilton School. So unless you want to pursue it, maybe we just leave it in their hands when they're ready to put together an agreement.
So are we taxing them according to the old agreement?
No.
We're not taxing them at all.
No, we're taxing them. I mean, for the properties that are taxable, we're taxing them. Right, their taxable percentage is actually up from where it was previously. They also have a significant solar installation that's being assessed on their property, and because the town does not have an exemption for that, that is being assessed, and that was one of the questions that we had, or that they had, that came back.
So it behooves them to get in touch with us.
It would, yes.
Maybe they've just decided to pay their taxes at the full rate like everybody else.
The only question ever really was, are those buildings that were,
I'm sorry, I cracked myself up.
it's my nephew, and I babysit, he cracks himself up like that too. And he's only a year and a half.
Yeah, I was gonna say, he's probably only a year and a half, right? Thank you, Lauren.
But it's just really those properties, a lot of the school is exempt under the, they have the educational exemption on that, but then dorms, dining rooms, and kitchens above 150,000 are taxable. So a lot of those buildings that are, partial dorm, partial day student, and things move around, that's why the agreement was in place before, was to try to equalize that so that they weren't having the big changes in value every year when, more day students moved out and more dorm students came in. So it really benefited them to have that just for budgeting purposes. I don't know that we were still taxing them for what they had. It was a known number up front and agreed on, that's
They were
all.
more proactive about it than,
Absolutely.
Right.
It's kind of, it's, I know I reached out on multiple occasions, sent all the information, I know Jeannie did as well, and there just hasn't been that, that was the whole goal. And I don't know if the dynamics up there are different with staffing and whatnot, but it just has fallen, so they get a tax bill just along with everyone else, so. I haven't heard anything since that from them, so if you wanna leave it there and
reach out to
wait
them, but I don't see a huge need to do that. I think that, for 10 years, we've reached an agreement, and we worked diligently on this agreement, and we renewed it. It was for 5 years, and we renewed it for 5 years. So it's been in existence for 10 years, and we've walked every portion of that property over and over and over again. So it's been in place for 10 years now, and if we did our due diligence and put the notice out there and been proactive months ago on this, let them know, I can't, other than a phone call and say we're without it, or an email
I
to
did
Beth, okay?
Mhm.
To me, I would just let it go. I can't see pressuring them into an agreement that they asked for to begin with. I personally can't see that. I know that they're going through changes with headmasters, but Peter's leaving, so.
Really?
Yeah,
Yeah, Rachel.
at the end of the year, yeah.
That's too bad.
Yeah.
Good for them.
I thought you knew it, I didn't
No,
realize.
that's news.
An email came out about 3 weeks ago.
So the only other issue is the contract, and since Lauren was here today, I didn't know if you had any questions for her on the contract. And that's it, no?
The only, so, where is the contract anyway? Do we have it?
I gave you all copies of the old contract and the new contract, and that's,
So the only question that I had was
you had it, so.
if it had anything to do or interfered with any of the mapping that we were going to discuss later on.
I think you.
interfere how. I mean, it's a separate agreement altogether.
Okay.
Two separate issues, two separate concerns, I guess. But it has nothing that I'm aware of. There's the only thing that we, from an assessing standpoint, deal with would be any changes that would be needed to the maps obviously come to us as assessing, and so that we could enter lot lines, subdivisions, and mergers. But whoever you choose to be your mapper is completely a separate issue.
So I didn't know if that interfered with, I know that we have a group contract with, we have town clerk stuff, and then we have this, and we have this, and we have this.
There's no allegiance to that at all.
Okay,
There's
good.
doesn't affect it in any way, shape, or form.
All right. And I don't have any other questions regarding the contract.
Peter? Joe?
No, that was just, there will be questions.
I'm sure there will.
How much time do we have? It
Catherine?
expires at the end of this year, right?
Till 6.
I mean, it's up to you. I know you have another. If you want to formulate questions and get them to me that I can address or put into the contract, I'm happy to do that. I'm happy to sit here and answer whatever you have, whatever is your pleasure.
Well, let me start by saying this. So the new contract is different considerably than the one we're in now. There's actually quite a bit left out of the new one that you were doing in the old one, for the current one.
And I think Jeannie did reference some of those things. And so I have kind of standard contract language that we use. And when we redid the contract, I left out some of the Tilton-isms that were in there previously, some of the concerns that the board had that I had added to the contract previously. And I'm happy to re-add all of that stuff. Did I send you a revised one on that?
You have not.
Okay.
We
We went through some of those concerns, and as I said to Jeannie, I'm happy to,
So would it be easier if
I revised and
you
sent that?
revised what you and
Sure.
Jeannie spoke of, and then we do this?
Right, because as I said, she asked some questions, I was like, oh, of course we do that, but it wasn't specifically spelled out, and those were some of the things that the board had pointed out before, and I had gone back to the drawing board and add, so I didn't take them out intentionally, just went back to kind of my form contract, and so some of that stuff that was in there specifically for Tilton was inadvertently left out, so I'm happy to put that all back in.
Well, let's do that then.
The other thing, and I'm happy to revise that, and the other thing was Tim mentioned today, so I'm gonna run you some of those reports, the old to new stuff, and he wanted to see something in the contract that specified in the update year what we would provide to the board as deliverables before you accept values, like those ratio reports. So he typed, I don't know,
Tim.
yeah,
Yes.
Tim typed something up
Yes.
and asked me, and so I will get that verbiage from him and add that to that section as well.
So probably a bigger question, because all the little things I think we worked through, but the big change in the contract had to do with the number of
Cycle
properties
inspections.
that you were gonna do. So it was like 613 per year, and then it dropped down to 10% of the 2,900 properties. So I
Yeah.
think that might have been a concern with some of the selectmen of,
I've got it highlighted.
Yes, so, I mean, as you can, oh, I'm looking at the old one. As you can imagine, taxpayers are not necessarily, yeah, I've got it here. Taxpayers are not necessarily happy ever to see the assessors coming to their door. And frequently, more and more frequently. So we haven't really had huge data issues in the town, and that's why I proposed the 10%, but to do that annually. In addition to that, it would be, let me look at my contract for a second. So about 2,600 parcels, so that would mean cyclically looking at about 266 properties a year. In addition to that, all the properties that we visit for new construction would also be visited and verified, as well as sale properties. So I don't know necessarily that we actually look at really much less property that way. It's just sales, new construction, and then the cycled inspection percentage list is a little bit lower.
It's about 2/3 lower. In 2016, 673 properties were visited, and you're proposing a little more than 200.
over 5 years.
Over 5 years, yeah.
Versus 2 years of the 600 number.
Right, so we were looking at them kind of in a more condensed basis and looking to spread that out. The town has a really good permit process in place. You know, like some of our smaller rural communities that don't have permitting, you know, we need to go out and look at properties. People are building new houses, and, you know, those are things that get missed when you don't have an inventory. But we do have a good permit process in town here, so that helps, and we're out for permitting a lot more than we would be in some of the smaller communities. And as I said, it's just, the data hasn't really been an issue, so looking to spread that out, because we haven't had data issues. We're just constantly visiting the same properties and looking to visit them for the sake of visiting them. If there's not really any data changes, is it really necessary to look at that many properties? And that's what we were seeing, and that's why we customized this for Tilton.
But you're not gonna know that unless you visit the properties, so certainly ones that building permits and new construction
And sales.
they changes in sales, yes, but things happen in people's homes, and they're not really aware of how that may affect their assessed value. I know in the past years, we've had, you know, a lot of people come in because their information was incorrect, and they weren't houses that had had anything new. They could live in and things happen, so.
That's gonna continue to happen, and.
I know, but I don't think the 10% is enough. I just don't.
Okay. It's tough. We can look at 100% in 1 year, look at 10% in 1 year. It still doesn't mean we're getting into any more properties. And, and that's really the bigger issue.
I think the fact that the property owners don't want us on their property is a separate issue that we have to resolve. Because they don't understand that it's to their benefit.
You're preaching to the choir. I agree.
And that's something that we have to fix. We have to change. We have to, whatever we need to do to educate them so that they can see the benefit of it. But, okay, all right. For me, that's fine. I'll wait for the revised.
Yeah, I think that probably the bigger issue was it, you know, as Catherine said, it looked like a lot was taken out, so it didn't appear to be apples to apples. For instance, you know, when you talk about in this, your new contract warrant, it has $2,435 for the term. And if you just looked at the old one, the same, you know, number, that number is $1,542. So when I saw that, I thought, well, it doesn't look like it's getting cheaper. It looks like it's getting more expensive, and you're doing less properties. But you pointed out to me, which that's why I say, because it's it's not an easy contract to read.
Yeah.
You pointed out that we actually have to add in that other number.
Right, your total before was $3,125 a month.
So this is actually less, and you are doing less, but it is less. So anyway, I think we'll work through it and we can bring
Absolutely.
it back to the.
Yeah, and I'm happy to revise that and then come back and answer any, you know, give you some time to digest that and then come back and meet with the board again and answer any specific questions you may have at that time. Partially, yeah, it's tough because of the way it's, right. Okay, did you guys have any other questions for me? Do you want me to hang out, or you want me to leave you?
Well, we had some, let's see, we've John Clark coming from the Winnisquam Resort Condo Association on property assessment, so I don't know if our assessor here.
I already met with Mr. Clark, I don't know if he wants me to stay, whatever. You know, and that's been probably one of the largest group of people I've met with today was from the Winnisquam Resorts. So they all have that information, and they're gonna file abatements and get me that. So if there's something globally that needs to be addressed,
Yeah.
it will be coming back.
John Clark at Contingiani Drive. Do you happen to have a overall appreciation percentage for Tilton as a whole? A lot of us have extremely high, 60, 70% tax increases. So we instantly think surplus is coming to a budget. So where is the mill rate, and is it correct? How do we verify that? That's why I'm wondering if there was, you know, you take raw land, you take commercial property, you take residential, lakefront, wherever you might be. Is there an overall percentage for Tilton appreciated since you've done your data collection? I'm trying to come up with a verification to see if the mill rate is correct, because
Well, you have
at the
this,
surface, we
you have
see that
this-
there's a huge surplus for the allocation of the money.
the total town, or the total value increase was, you have that on here. The total taxable increase was 20%. right?
20%
If I'm
on
reading that
average for
correct.
the town of Tilton.
Right, that's a total change in the value from the total town value last year to the total value this year. So not, I don't know if that's exactly what you're looking
Close.
for, because every property would change
Sure.
differently.
So your mill rate went down to 14% roughly as a reduction?
It was 24.85 and it went down to 22.06.
It's about 14%.
I didn't do the
So
math.
there's a
but I
small
did.
disparity in that percentage. Just curious, how do we go about verifying that number? To see if the tax rate is correct.
Our tax rate, our 2206, you mean?
Yeah.
Department of Revenue Administration.
Yeah, right.
Well, the DRA, because we
They
put
set
in an MS1, and they're the ones that tell us this is your tax rate. But keep in mind, too, that we as a town, they do the town, they do the fire separately, they do the school separately. So like for instance, the fire department went up 17.52% this year. So the school, I don't have the figures in front of me, so you add all those entities, the county, the local, the fire, and the school together, and you get 2206. Okay, so you have to add all those together.
So I was one of those that you mentioned that the assessment and the taxes were way up, and the reason I didn't do anything is I thought, oh, everybody told me the millage would go down. Well, when it went down 14%, when the taxes went 59%, that's all I'm saying. So, sorry, 49%.
Right.
So that's why my question is about the millage rate as well. And when does that get reassessed? Or when does that get looked at again? Is it another year? Or
The tax rate is every year. The
Every year.
Department of Revenue sets that.
Right.
And
so that's
so
what shocks me.
it's two things. So the two components, because as you said, the values go up 20%, you would assume the tax rate comes down 20%.
Well, not even-
But that's all
I'll
things
think
being,
close.
yeah, that's
At
all
this
things being equal. The budget plays into there too. So the total budget for the town, the county, local school and state school all comes into that too. So if any of those components saw increases in spending, that also has an impact and you wouldn't see the rate drop as much.
And decrease in revenues play part in that.
Right, so all of that information goes to the state, and the state sets the tax rate in New Hampshire. I know in Mass and in Maine, the local assessor's office sets the tax rate, and they figure out what they need. In New Hampshire, we're overseen completely by the state and the Department of Revenue, and they're the ones who set that information. So that would be who you would look at to see all those components, to see if they calculated the rate properly.
So our tax rate last year was 7.44. So our tax rate this year is $6.38 for us. But if you look at the county, it was $1.41 last year, and the county this year is $1.16. The school last year was $11.22. The school this year is $10.23.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. There.
No, 218 and 219. That's what it says on the website.
That sounds like it's reversed.
I did give the numbers reversed.
Well, I'm reading what it says on here.
It was 11.22 last year and 10.23 this year. That would have gone down.
Right. And so,
Just maybe not proportionally, but it
Right.
did.
so it's 2206 this year, and the total of 2485 last year.
The assessments are up.
Right.
Correct.
The assessments.
There's the rub.
Part of the rub. Right. And that's what I think we're hearing too. If the value went up 20%, but the tax rate dropped 20%, we probably wouldn't have anybody complaining.
Right.
But when the value went up more than 20%, which happens with
Right.
a group of properties definitely, and then the tax rate didn't drop proportionally, it's kind of a double-edged sword there. So their value's up more than the average increase, and the tax rate didn't drop proportionally.
Right.
So it's the two situation. It's not, one or the other, it's both. It's the combination that's making it so egregious.
But the MS1, which is where the DRA, that's all public information. I mean, that's set by the DRA.
The MS1 comes from us, that's
Well, I
the
mean,
generation of the
it's the tax rating, and we publish that in our town report. You have last year's, that's in the reports. All of that's in our town reports. MS-32 is what I'm trying to say, right?
Go ahead.
Just get back to I guess it sounds like commercial is the big animal in the house here that's kind of screwing us all up in some ways, but it sounds like appraisals are too, for assessments. Do we have data in New Hampshire on what other towns' commercial rates were versus our town? To Peter's point, if we could get information on our town, but also have similar sized towns, commercial numbers, land numbers, to have something to compare to. It's just, we seem to be in an incredibly strong economy, and I'm still scratching my head on why commercial property values are down here. In this, we may not have a better economic environment than we've had in the last 5 years. So if there's some comparisons from other towns or anything that you've done or data that you're using across the state would be helpful. I'd certainly like to see it.
If I can just clarify too, it's not that commercial property is down, but it's not necessarily up to the same percentage. So when we look at commercial land and buildings, they've seen an increase of 15.2%. So they have gone up, they just haven't gone up at the same percentage of appreciation that we've seen on residential properties. So that that makes some of that swing because they weren't at the same percentage. Not that they didn't go up. So I just want to clarify that.
What was the average residential increase?
Well, I gave you originally was the total taxable increase was 20.3. Residential land and building is 26.8%.
Lauren, Gary Rayburn from Emily Drive. First of all, thank you very much. You were very informative today when you met with us, and we appreciate that. Just curious, where our properties on the lake, the tax increase has been 15 to 21%. That's a little bit of a shock, obviously. On the lake, what are you seeing the tax increase on average on, say, the two lakes, the two larger lakes here in town?
That's not a statistic that I didn't come prepared with statistics tonight, but Pat gave me this. Unfortunately, this is a breakdown from our total tax, and it doesn't because waterfront is in the residential, largely in the residential class. It's all in that. So that total percentage was the 26.8. I can gather that information for you because that's part of what I have to get for the board, but I don't have that percentage here tonight to give you, but it would be classified within the residential.
Thank you. I appreciate it if we could get that if it's not too much work.
Yeah,
Just
absolutely.
trying to understand where we hit, it feels like we were hit harder than some of the properties that we did comparisons on. And so just trying to get a sense of where we fit into that would be great. Thank you.
Absolutely.
So we were hit hard, I was hit hard this year because in the last 5 years, there was a huge influx of landlords selling out. So multifamily homes, there was a lot of data and a lot of information and a lot of sales. So that's where it hit me. I went up to like 44% or 46% in the value because of that data.
And the goal with assessing standards in the state 20 years ago, roughly, with trying to mandate updates once every 5 years, was to try to alleviate some of these big shifts and value changes. Because we used to go 20 years or 10 years, and then people would really see a big increase. And so when we worked in the state to try to come up with more transparent valuations and more fair and equitable assessments across the board, they put into law that we have to value anew once every 5 years to hopefully alleviate that. But if in that 5-year period it's been a steady incline or a steady decline, over 5 years, that value still could change pretty drastically.
We had one landlord sell 12 pieces of property in 1 year.
So, you know, the goal was to make it a little bit tighter and not go 20 years and have those big drastic changes, but in some cases, and particularly in a heavily appreciating market, it's still burdensome.
The end to him.
Yeah, another question with the property value, I mean, it's pretty remarkable hearing what they've been assessed at. Is the board brought up to speed on this stuff before the tax bills go out, that you know, holy smokes, waterfront properties up 50 or 60%, and other properties in town might be 40 or 50%, and are you prepared by Avatar to be able to address this and understand this ahead of time, to maybe reach out to, you know, citizens of Tilton and say, hey, we have, it seems to me it's a problem, but now we're in the abatement phase. I mean, I'd give my keys to the house to somebody if they wanted to pay me what I'm assessed.
I'll go lower. You know, and then what I said, you know, like Lauren said, Avatar sent out letters of the values.
And I agree completely, Pat, not to interrupt.
And there was a handful of people
I was
that
one of
answered
them.
her.
I was one of them. And it was almost assuring me that don't worry about the rate, it's coming down. You're not really gonna notice this. And the fellow's very nice, and he walked me through everything. And I did get a small adjustment down, but I didn't go back around and say, I want another round of meetings, because I was told, you know what, everything kind of evens out in the end. And if I had to pay a couple of $100 more, okay. But now, you know, now I'm looking at it and say, wait a minute, this isn't what I was told back in July. And so I just think we can't really rest on, you gotta go meet them, because I did, and I came out of there feeling okay.
So the information that we sent out to say that your assessed value is this, and after you got the information, was not necessarily the best information. That we have to work on. Because saying to you, well, we really should wait, it is true.
Because we don't know.
Because we don't know, but we don't have a fact answer, because we have to wait till October, November for taxes, right?
Well, actually, the answer to your question is yes, we did have the information. But like the property owners, we didn't sit here and use the formula and figure out what that assessed value was going to do to those properties. And, you know, so we get the information, we sign a warrant, the tax rate is set, we sign a warrant. And then the tax bills are generated. So we didn't, you know, create tax bills, if you will, to see exactly, okay, this property at 416 Laconia Road is going to be paying, you know, $1,000 more in taxes because of this assessed value. We didn't do that. And we've never done that.
No, but I would think that Avatar
Well, we
would
should
at
do
least
that.
give you the heads up that, hey, there are properties that are 50 or 60% going up.
No.
You're gonna have people running through the rooms here.
72%.
We have somebody who's
Yes,
next.
my name is David Boyd. I have 6 Evelina Drive. I'm also a Samberton resident. I'm one of those people that got hit with a 70% increase. My cottage was, which is 400 square feet, on cinder blocks right now, winterized, was valued at 142, went to 240. I don't have a problem with the assessed value of the building being 50,000, but the land is out of control. The land in our association is valued over $1 million an acre. Yet the neighbor to our left, who has 2.7 acres and we have a little over 3, his is valued at 300,000. There's a huge disparity. And so, and if you go to a neighbor to our right, same problem. So, to me, you know, I'm shocked. I met with the same people at Avatar. I could see a train wreck coming. I saw the number. I talked to them. I was assured, and here we are right now. And instead of paying $3,000, I'm paying $5,600 for a cottage on cinder blocks. It's winterized. It's incredible. So I'm here to express, you know, my concern. And I was hoping the association as a whole was going to do a presentation. I don't know if it's going to happen.
I got some handouts.
Okay, but I think it's important that you guys see all this information that they're going to present.
It's about 1 minute, if that's okay, maybe 2.
You want to stay or go, or?
I think we probably have gotten all that we need from Lauren. We had her scheduled till 6. I'm sure we're gonna be back in touch.
I'm not going anywhere,
and
I'm
stuff.
here, contractually bound to answer all your abatements, don't worry. As I said, there's, and I know that this has been particularly this group has been hit the hardest, and they have a good realtor over there who's gonna put together some comparisons for them, so, we're happy to take a look at that, and as I said, if there's a change, it would be a global change there, and anything specific on anyone's one property, we would go out and correct that specifically, but even if they didn't file, if there's, a global change, we would present that to the board.
Much like what we did when we had to change the downtown. We had
Correct,
to reevaluate a whole section of town.
exactly. So if there's an
Adjust
issue
that.
uncovered and we need to address it, we will address that.
Okay, well, thanks, Lauren, and
So just to reiterate on that, sorry to keep going back to that. So we can just, we'll get the 17 of us to do an abatement.
Well, you have to each
Individually
individually
do,
file one,
yeah.
protect your rights,
Okay.
but if it's the same information,
It's, yeah,
and, if you have one bathroom, not two bathrooms, that would be something specific, but if we're looking globally at that market information that you got together, absolutely.
okay.
Thank you.
I think that answers, and thank you for taking the time.
anything else for Lauren?
I'm just gonna stay.
Chairman, I have one.
Yes.
If I may, Bob Lee was one of our condos. Thank you, Lauren. One question as it relates to the property assessments, if you will. There are 17 units within the association. One unit, which happens to be directly next to mine, went up approximately 37% in assessed value. And the other 16 units were anywhere from 55 to 72%. So just for our edification, if you will, can you offer any insight as to how that much of a disparity that
I don't know specifically the one you're referencing. We looked at, you only had one sale in your entire neighborhood. That was a recent sales transaction. There's been relatively little sales information in that direct neighborhood over the past 10 years. So you had one sale there, and we were trying to evaluate properties, so the closer to the water, the closer to the view of the water, the higher that land amenity value is, the farther away, the lower that value is. Where in the past, I think we looked at things more flat across the board there, and obviously someone who is closer to the water can see the water, touch it, feel it, it would have a higher value than one's farther away. So I don't know if the one you're referring to, maybe the farthest one away.
So no, specifically, I'm one that's waterfront,
Yeah,
right? I get the view tax, right? My neighbor, directly to my right, I can touch his house, it's 12 feet away from mine,
yeah.
has the identical view, he's identically in the same parallel, and I went up 68%, he was 37% in assessed value, so, hey, listen,
No,
it's okay. It's okay.
I don't know off the top of my head, but I'm
That's
happy
fine.
to check into that.
Okay.
What, do you know the number?
What are you doing now?
14. Contagion.
Oh,
Yeah.
If we could ask, I think it's appropriate for us to ask that this document just be entered into the record, is that?
Okay,
is that appropriate?
sure,
Thank you.
certainly.
Do you have an extra one down there?
Thank you very much.
You have one more question, I think, Rick.
Yeah, it was just a simple question. When were these letters sent out to the community, to the residents?
April?
June. They
No,
did
June.
hearings in July.
Oh, that's why we never got, we moved in July. So we never knew what was going on, so that's why this is all new to us, and I'm sure if we would've got it,
So the previous seller did not disclose
not
that
a
to you?
word, he
Yeah,
didn't even
nice guy, huh?
associate with us. But now we're finding all this out too late, otherwise we would have acted on it sooner, and questioned this, that, and the other thing. And came in, more prepared, but we came in blind. So we're trying to catch up on what we can and cannot do. So I appreciate.
Yeah, so you still have time for the abatement, and we're still gonna look into the veterans thing, see what we can do with that, so,
Thank you.
you know.
Just another question. Solar panels came up with the Tilton Selectmen roundabout with me, because we set solar panels in town. Does the board have the ability to change that, or does that have to go before the town?
Yeah, warrant article.
It would be a warrant.
Yes, it would have to be a warrant article.
Can't be a petition
25
warrant article.
signatures can get a warrant article.
Yeah, it would have to be a petition warrant article because the board voted not to put it on the warrant last year.
I think it's 50.
Not
Increase for a warrant article, I thought it was 50.
the petition.
I'm sorry, Pat, what was that?
Last year, we voted not to put it on a warrant article.
So
As a
you have
warrant
the
article,
ability
so it would have
to...
to be a petition warrant article, which requires 25 resident signatures.
Registered voters,
Registered voters signatures.
not residents, they have to be registered.
Registered voters. Thank you.
And any taxpayer can do that, a petition warrant article of any,
Of anything.
I usually go for 30.
Well, it's always better to get more, because if they're not a registered voter, then it would get.
And
They
everything
think
is
they are.
verified.
Sometimes they think they are and they're really not. You don't want to get thrown out last minute.
So I guess you have solar panels. You can look at the database also for other property owners that have solar panels, because I'm sure they would sign a
I
petition
couldn't
warrant.
find that. Maybe you could help me.
I could query that for you, absolutely.
There
Okay,
are those that don't have solar panels that would sign too.
Right, but
Let's
just
get right
more
into
likely.
the presentation. We have from 6 to 6:15, so I think you have some information you want to share. So,
You done it?
yeah,
Okay?
don't get into your time too much.
My suspended bill. Really, Gary Rayburn from Deadline Lane. Oh, absolutely, thank you very much. First of all, thank you very much for your time. And it's really, the document that you have in front of you, if you go to the page with the plot plan, this page, the only thing that we wanted to respectfully point out is that when we looked at the other properties around us, the price per acre for waterfront is the same view, and the properties are labeled here in the plot plan. Range from about $157,000 per acre up to about $285,000. And then our property was $1,066,000 an acre. So it was a shock to us to see significantly higher. Lauren was very nice to try to explain to us why that was the case. But obviously this is a burden for us. Also, the cost per foot of waterfront from our neighbor properties ranged from $1,023 to about $3,400. And our cost per foot was $11,024. The assessments in our community, the taxes went up by 50% on many of the homes in there. One of them is actually, I think, a tear down, and it was valued at $315,000. So we're going to
When
work
was it
through.
torn down?
I'm sorry?
When was it torn
No,
down?
it's in a condition, hasn't been occupied for a couple of years. So we're going to work with Warren to file the abatements and go through that process. But we just wanted to make it known that this is a tough burden on us. I don't know if any of my neighbors want to add anything to that.
I would like to add a point that in revenue, we've gone from about 84,000 taxable revenue for the town up to 128,000 additional funding from our community alone. I think we're all for general inflationary increases in taxes. I'm not saying that, but this is the largest taxation without representation. I hate to say it, it's not a joke, but that I've ever seen for our small community. We tried to get comparisons for a 3-mile stretch of lakefront to see if anybody else was in a similar scenario to us. It's frustrating. I think we're voicing our concerns and we're learning a lot about how maybe we can remedy it. But we thought it was important to share that because it's a good amount of revenue. There's a lot of families that enjoy coming here.
Comparisons are tough because we're in a community. You know, there's not a lot of those on the lake, and a lot of times the assessments based
Did
on.
you check Lakewood?
Yes.
And,
Lakewood
and,
cottages?
yeah, and then Lake?
Yeah, so I can give you, Lakewood cottages.
Is that Emory?
Yeah.
I can just speak to one specific property that was pretty comparable to mine. It's actually larger. I'm Jeff Pike, I live at 2 Lena Lane. I have 481 square feet, no foundation on piers. It is 2 bedrooms but no closets, so they're really not bedrooms. But they have beds in them. Compared to a unit at 8 Emory Way in Tilton, which is 968 square feet. That's 3 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms. Their December assessment, their July assessment was $121,000, where mine was $136,000. However, in December, theirs went up to $149,000, and mine went up to $233,000.
You don't have a water.
And I don't have a water bill. And I'm in the 3rd row. So, I mean, so this neighboring cottage, the next association, is that how close it is, Trevor? Next, Emory is nearby?
Yes.
You know, it's double the square footage. Oh, and I'm sorry, I have 1 bathroom, they have 2 bathrooms. So it's double the size, and they're paying approximately $80,000 less. I don't mind paying taxes for the assessed amount. In 2018, my wife and I refinanced that cottage. They came in, they appraised it at $150,000, which is a little bit more than what I was assessed at back in July. I think that it was a fair assessment at $150,000 back then. But at $233,000, no one's going to pay me $233,000 for a 3rd row. Basically, the shed with a kitchen and heat. You know, it's only 81 square feet. So I will also be filing the abatement.
Yes, please do.
I'm Rainette Whitty. I'm on Contagiani Way, 1st row. I have 518 square feet, and my property was assessed at $316,000. Last year it was assessed at $182,000. It's a major, major increase.
The deer down that I spoke of, the chimney is clean, hasn't been occupied in 2 years, the clapboard's coming off of it. It's approximately, the roof is gone, well, it's leaking. It appears to be at the end of its economic life, I should say. It's approximately, I believe, 330 square feet, and it's assessed at $304,000. It is on wooden pillars that sit on the sides here. So we had one house that sold in our association, I believe it was $429,000. That house is significantly larger, and really is almost like, it's a significantly larger house, and it has a direct water view. And that was, Lauren had said that was the comparable shares. So I think we're going to be able to get some progress on the abatements. Just want to thank you
It
for
certainly
my time.
sounds like it. Yeah, and thanks for bringing to our attention. It's always tough when we do that 5-year assessment.
Well, things changed a lot this last 5 years, because the last assessment, we didn't go through this. My taxes went up, everybody tables taxes went up. I get it. And then I'll be talking to Lauren downstairs myself come January.
Well, I wish you the best of luck.
Well, thank you very much.
One of the things that happens when, when the interest rates go down so much and they're so low, it inspires people to buy houses, because now they think that, okay, for that $1,000 a month, I can now afford a more expensive home. So what happens is the market values of the houses realtors a lot of times will raise them up because they know what people's budget is. So, and that causes like an artificial thing, and with the interest rates hanging like that, everything just went, psh. Who knows, next year those interest rates could, I'm sure you guys remember, we had 12% interest rates, and then property value goes way down. And we just got like the perfect storm for real estate, home real estate.
I would agree with you, but proportion,
Our
we're an
percentages
outlier, if you will take a statistic, we're way off the grid compared to.
Oh, yeah.
Interest rates driving the market, I understand that, but our rates compared to everybody
Oh,
else.
no, I think, putting this stuff together, and it's great that you guys have a lot of information in that, and Lauren, she'll work with you, I'm sure.
And she was very
We
helpful.
want to get that, and it could trigger, a complete change in that category, how that's assessed, so.
Okay.
Yes. Peter has.
Yeah, for most of you, except for Mr. DeVoy, because he's a non-resident, get your calendars ready. First Tuesday of March is the town vote. The Saturday is when the budget's voted on. We're one of the small pieces. The following Monday night's the fire district. Following Saturday is the school district. Those are the big nuggets of your bill. I believe Mr. DeVoy is associated with another portion of our bill, the county bill.
Yes.
So you could talk to him on that portion also. But make yourself known at when the budget's being brought up and voted on.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for your
Yeah,
help.
thanks.
Thank you.
Copy this?
I have a copy.
Okay,
Lauren has a copy.
Yeah. Lauren,
I gave it to Lauren.
okay, so, next thing we have on the agenda is Tim Pearson, Finance IT Director, has land use budget review.
Thank you.
And the marathon.
Finance, IT, I'm out.
We are talking budget.
Yeah, this is finance.
Right up. First, I'm just going to hand out, this is the email language. Thanks.
Read your report?
No.
I was gonna say, it's only part of the page. Not enough information.
Oh. That's several things.
He did mention this, Tim said she was.
Yeah, I did get a debrief in the morning. That's what took me a few minutes to get up here.
Sure.
Well, there's a little hubbub over at the middle school tonight, and I almost ran over there. First of all, I'd like to defer the land use budget till a little later, after the non-public, as there were some changes that are a result of what will be discussed later in the non-public meeting. So, but I did send out something last night, and I apologize for the late notice. I'm not expecting you to make a decision tonight, but as I mentioned the last time going through the administrative budget, that when we got to the mapping portion, that I was the one that was remiss in not seeing to it that contract was done sooner. Talk about how, as we went through looking for a replacement planner and then switching to land use coordinator, we were trying to find, let the person get settled, get used to what we're doing, what our needs are. And then we've been working on looking at alternatives. So The land use coordinator is very familiar with Hooksit's application, which is cartographics or CAI technologies. And there's a proposal here from them, as well as a proposal from Avatar, which is TerraMaps. So this is not for our assessing database or software that deals, and it's not a replacement of anything we have today other than manual maps. So we had been using a company in the southern part of the state, which was all manually done, with CAD software. We would receive printed outputs and PDFs, and that's what's on our website right now. And we moved that activity to Avatar about, I want to say about maybe 2 years ago at this point, and then paid them for the updates to those manual maps, but it was still manual. And then looking and trying to find a path towards getting to have digital maps, GIS shaped files. And I have a demonstration I can show you that will give you an idea of what we're talking about here. But basically there are two components to any solution we're going to look at. One has to be done, one does not have to be done. The first part is if we want GIS mapping, we're going to have to pay for someone to convert our, what we have today, which are CAD files and maps, some manually done maps for overlays, and we're going to have somebody do that work to lay it all out. And so whether it's Avatar or cartographics, or CAI technologies, or someone else, there's a certain amount of time required to do that. And the two solutions are fairly close in price. Avatar's was $6,750 for that conversion, and CAI was $6,000. CAI, this is their primary business. This is what they do. And in the email that I sent to the board, there's a list of clients in there, and they're in many different states, and there must be 30 or 40 of them, if not more, in New Hampshire. We are surrounded by towns around us are using this solution, and I'm going to show you, demonstrate for you in Northfield how you can use that right off the website and what the advantages of this are. But that's the second piece. So the first piece is converting things. We can use it in-house. We don't ever have to put it on the web. The second piece is a web service for this, these GIS maps and layers. And then lastly, there's the issue of updates. So some bigger cities and towns, say for instance, Hooksett pays a set fee every year for their updates. So if there's a lot line adjustment, a new parcel, things like that, it's covered under this agreement. Our activity is very low for lot line adjustments and parcels. So Leanne estimated we're looking at maybe 8 to 10 a year on average, if that. And so we can go time and materials for that type of activity at $80 an hour. They have people that, that are techs that do this work. So lot line adjustment, it's a much easier activity than, say, a new parcel or subdivision, lines. And Leanne and I had discussed the possibility of the planning board and or the selectmen, but I think it is under the purview of the planning board to be able to include a fee for a lot line adjustment or subdivision parcel that once approved by the planning board, so we wouldn't pay anything until it's approved by the planning board, but a nominal fee, say $50 for a lot line adjustment, $100 for a parcel, that kind of. So if somebody's coming in and they're going to do 30 parcels, subdivide and have 30 parcels, they would be paying, for the GIS that we would have to pay, in essence. So we would still have some costs associated with updates, but the majority of it would be offset by fees, if the board or if the planning board or selectmen, whichever is the correct authority for those fees, agrees. And I was incorrect, and Leanne corrected me in the budget for 2020 in here, in that our updates will be included through April with CAI Technologies. So we wouldn't have any additional cost in 2020 for updates, but in 2021 we would have the cost of those updates. So we would budget for some money for 2021 because the updates are included through April, and you do them once a year is the way it's done. So in any event, I've included not only my write-up from last night, and I had intended to do this for several days, and hopefully Jeannie will back me up in the frenetic activity in Town Hall without Gail around and just all the, as you can imagine, the citizens coming in and all the different things going on. But I've included the proposal from CAI. I've included also the proposal from Avatar, which what we were looking at was option 3 on the back page. And what I'd like to do is give you a short demonstration. And I've only worked with the software for maybe about 12 and a half minutes. But it's very intuitive. And if you don't mind, you'll indulge me to...
I had a couple questions.
Sure.
We've had a couple other types of software that we've used over the years, CAD programs and mapping things that different departments subscribe to. What's going on? Can those be converted, or
So,
are they still files?
right,
More
so-
than just what we...
Right, so that, like the sewer lines, if that layer could be brought in and could be a layer for these GIS maps. So the wetlands, the sewer lines that we have, that the sewer administrator has, I don't know if they're all mapped out, but the ones that they have, those could be laid out. The groundwater,
Protection district.
The protection district, thank you. Floodplain, there's a whole number, and you'll see there's a whole series of things that you can show, zoning as well.
Well, I guess my concern is that
Mhm.
if we have sewer that has one, and then we have maps of groundwater protection and conservation on another one, and land use on another, and then we switch to another,
Yeah.
and everybody else is still on the old things, wouldn't it be a good idea to have
They-
everybody on board with
Yes.
this?
That's the intent, that this would be one central GIS mapping solution. So we won't develop the parcels ourselves, but if there are, so I suppose if there were changes to the sewer maps and there was something that needed to be layered in, that might be a small fee from CAI. If we were
Like $80 an hour for them to do that.
right, if we did a new TIF district, if we had a TIF district or something like that, and we wanted to show it as a layer on the map, I mean, I don't think it would be very much to do because it's the outer boundaries of these things that they put in, and it's just shaded or colored. Yes, we would not want to have multiple versions, but the other thing is, there may be other reasons why the sewer administrator, may be doing some design work with the CAD software or something else. So it's entirely possible, they might have other uses for that. But generally speaking, you also have to update that software from time to time, and the updates on CAD software can be really pricey. $750 to $1,000 a year, possibly new training, depending upon the release and how extensive the different releases. So I just don't know the extent. I do know that she has layers, and I do know that we've used the maps provided by the state, not the maps, the overhead pictures, if you will. But as you'll see, there are a number of things that you can link to. So one of the things I'd be looking to do is to have a link from our website, and I'm also working on right now including more data in our parcel thing that's available to citizens, so they can sort by number of bedrooms, number of bathrooms, size of house, kind of thing. So it'll have more data elements to it, and where they can download it and they can do their analysis if they need to. But from there, you'd be able to link and click on the link, and it'll take you to the GIS maps for that particular parcel. And conversely, from the parcel information, there can be a link to our tax map. So when you click on the parcel, it'll pull up not tax map, it'll pull up our tax card. So from Avatar. So that would still require me to go through the monthly process of regenerating the tax cards and things of that sort, but not much different from what I do now. So if you would indulge me, I'd like to give you a little look-see. If I can operate this computer back here.
Slideshow.
Okay, so here I have, this is the town of Northfield, as you might be able to see. I can zoom into the town. They have a topographical map here. I can go deep in. If I have this little cursor open, this is the informational one. If I mouse over a particular parcel ID, it'll give me the address and also the owner information. If I want to search on someone, it'll pull up anyone with anything with that search criteria in it. So if I'm looking for a particular...
Is that Gus?
Yes. If I'm looking for a particular parcel, it'll bring up a picture. It'll give me any documents that are attached to it. In this case, they have a plan document. So, where we have older documents that are important to a particular subdivision, they could be also linked. There's also the property card. Now, this is what Northfield uses, but what you would see here is what you're familiar with coming out of Avatar, the Avatar tax card. In addition, I can close this up a little bit. I can close this. I can look at a street view if I like, and if I got the right one. Oh, I have to select it. And it'll show me a street view from Google, so that's on any given property that I'm looking at. And I can also say I want to zoom out a little bit and see, well, let's see, is that in a floodplain? So I'm going to turn on floodplain. And I have to zoom out a little bit more, I guess, because clearly isn't. So here you can see these blue shaded areas. So if I click it off, floodplain's gone. I click it on, it's back on. I don't know if they have zoning maps on here. They do. So I'm not familiar with where you'll find the legend for these maps. I haven't investigated.
Do they have hydric soils, Tim?
So the things that are available from the state through Granite, the Granite project, anything like that is available. You can also, where is it here? So you can also view. I should take up some of these layers because it's going to review a little bit. Let's see here. This is the one I'm looking for. There is an overhead satellite view in one of these, and I can't read what that says. I think it does say bird's eye view.
Bird's eye view.
Yeah. So I probably have to click on the so it's not available for that particular region. If I want to find an abutter list for here, I can say, all right, I want to see parcels within 100 feet. So it's going to tell me who those parcels are. If I want to see the report of those parcels, here's the abutter list. If I want, be thinking about how much time this is going to save your land use professionals. If I want to see mailing labels for the abutter list, it's just that simple.
And what does this cost us now?
So this particular, the web interface here is $3,000 a year. And so I've shown you the layers, I've shown you this, I can, the search criteria is really anything. You can search on a particular road and look at all the properties along the road. So I'll just use Park Street. So if I were to close this and I want to select my, maybe these are available, the scenery. I don't know what Northfield has. I haven't spent as much time looking at this. But most of these you can see much more detailed information. Let's see, go back to this guy. So anyway, the point of this is that as you scroll around, as you're looking for information on a particular property, you can very quickly find out who owns what, what it looks like, that sort of thing. What was the other thing I want to show you? The butters, the layers.
Jim, why still have the blue?
Because I told it to search on, there are 67 properties rather on Park Street. Because I told it to search on Park Street. If I were to eliminate that, it eliminates. So it's telling me what I selected.
So, like,
does that make sense?
yeah, well, there was, I see a big landlocked one there. Like
Here?
Yeah. Can you give me information on that?
George Flanders. His drive.
Yep.
Must be a way in.
Yes, there is. Bird's eye. You sort of look around.
I don't understand why.
I guess it is.
It is off the one parallel apart.
So who enters all that information?
So this is done by CAI. So this is the conversion. This is what our parcels would look like. They would come out with the shape files. They would come out with the parcel ID, and I would work with them in linking the data. We'd upload the data per parcel so that when you mouse over these, it tells you information about it, and then also the linking of the tax cards to the parcel. So it really is a very robust system.
Jim,
Yes.
if all that's done, and we link it all, we get it all in their format, and then 3 years from now, they say it's gonna be $10,000 a year for it, how can we get out of it and still retain all the information?
Because in the contract, we own the shape files, so we still have access to that. But I can tell you that
In
they,
a proprietary format, or?
no, because it's GIS data. So the shape file is a shape file is a shape file.
So essentially what we lose is all the linking software to...
We would lose this layering. We wouldn't have their software. We would have just the data. So we would need something else to display it in, if you will. But I was just going to see if I can get this is Hooksett. Leanne did this so easily, finding the layer that was the, oh gosh. There's probably right. Oh, here we go. Okay, so the imagery. So you can look at, you can see streets, you can see labels, you can then, it's going to take a second to clear up a little bit. You know, there's all kinds of topographic, different canvases that you can use. So it really is a really very robust system. But if you think for a moment about the usefulness to, say, not only the land use office, but also for citizens looking for information on maps or parcels. You know, who owns it? How do I get to the tax card? You know, it's a lot more useful to do it visually. Also for economic development, gathering information about, you know, certain areas. I think there's a lot of utility in this. Conservation Commission, planning board members, zoning board members, as they're doing research, they don't have to come in and sit down at a computer here in town hall or you know, burden, you know, the land use people. They can, if they so choose, they can pull this information up on their own. So, in any case, that's it in a nutshell.
Do you have an avatar presentation or just this?
I don't, but I did ask. They don't have this the extent that this has. They don't have the same kind of functionality. They don't have as big a group that does this. This is what CAI does. If I can, so if you want to indulge me a second. I'll just show you the client list.
Would it be possible to check with all the other departments, see what they have for information, so that we know what it would cost to get everything
Certainly.
over one?
Here it is.
Like the sewer, I don't know what other
So-
departments have.
Here is their client list. So you can see here, New Hampshire starts, where does New Hampshire start? Massachusetts is to the left. Here's New Hampshire right here. I can zoom in a little bit more. But you can see there's, does it say 88 communities? And you can read down through them, you know, Belmont, Bow, Alton, Center Harbor, Franklin. Samberton uses it but doesn't use the web portion. We did get them to waive the setup fee for the web if we sign on when we're doing the conversion. So, so in any event, that's it in a nutshell, but I can certainly do as you wish and check with other departments. But that's basically, you know, they're all going to look this way, all these different ones. And I would encourage you to go into their client list and pull up some things and just see for yourself how easy it is. I believe the one that is the best example of Terra Maps is Atkinson, of all places. And they were their first map user, and they've made the biggest investment in it in terms of all the layers and all the features over time. But it even by the admission of the person that runs the maps, it doesn't have this kind of same functionality. So
They don't use it anymore. They don't use the,
no, I'm saying Avatar Terra Maps,
oh,
Atkinson.
right.
So so anyway, but that's you know, that's pretty much it. So what I would like to do, this was a recommendation from the land use coordinator, who is very familiar with the solution, having used it for years, and I think if we're going to go to this web interface, I think this is definitely I think a very viable option, if not the best option.
It's $3,000 a year.
It is.
And plus an additional 6,000 for the first year.
The 6,000 is the conversion. So
One time.
it's a one-time fee. That's to convert our manual data into shape files. And we have $5,500 budgeted for this year in mapping. So what I would do is take that $5,500 and I would find the additional $500 in the budget so that we could either execute that this year or encumber it. I would just want would ask the board to have a decision, in sufficient time that we could encumber that money for the solution. But I do think that there's a lot of benefits to this, for the town.
Is this a typo?
Yeah, okay.
So what happens if, you want us to make a decision in the next,
So
I
it
was...
really is 6,000.
Sorry.
You ready? Okay. You want us to make a decision on something that's gonna cost us an additional $3,000 in our budget each year, and next year, an additional $6,000, or this year, taking it out of monies at the end of the year. And this often happens to us at the end of the year. Oh, we can spend this much money at the end of the year. So we're gonna make a decision on a practice and a new and important, and look, it's great information to have. But you want us to make a decision on this in a couple of weeks. A new improved version of spending $3,000 a year. And a couple of years ago, we did that in land use and spent $3,000 or $4,000 on a program that we have yet to see in working to its fullest potential. And we had a lot of personnel changes in land use. What's to say that we have staffing issues next year and this doesn't get to its fullest potential, and yet we've committed $9,000 to next year?
Sure. Well, first of all, what we're looking at is, in terms of additional money this year, is $500. So we have $5,500 budgeted for this activity, whether it be with Terra Maps or with CAI.
It's still $5,500.
Right, which was budgeted for this purpose. So that's what I'm saying, is that we're not looking for an additional $5,500. This is what was budgeted last year and expected to be spent this year. The difference between the software that we use within the department and this software is that about the only intervention that we have with the GIS software is to annually provide the updates that they would do. So a folder of lot line adjustments, a folder of parcel maps, that sort of thing. Or parcel information from, I guess, a survey or a...
Which brings me to my next question. We're not getting the information. I had a 20-minute conversation with Lauren this afternoon before I came up. There was information, documented information 2 years ago on that whole White Rock, not White Rock, Gaslight thing, that information never got from land use to Gaslight, so we lost a good amount of assessment over 2 years that they added trailers, they added homes to it that it never got from land use to Lauren. So if it never gets to where it's supposed to go, we lose too. And that's already happening.
Clearly, and I'm not aware of that specific instance. Obviously that, at face value, that's obviously a failure of the process. Whether it be electronic or otherwise, just simply a manual process might also have the same flaw. If there is no means by which to transfer that information from one person to another or one department to another. So I don't know the specifics, but my understanding is, and just so that you're aware, I have spent some time with the code enforcement officer and helped him to develop some reports which, as far as I knew, were what the board wanted in terms of information coming out of the permitting and code enforcement package. So I believe, did he provide reports this week? Or?
He did, and I think I actually left it downstairs.
But in any event, so we had spent some training time at the, I think months ago, and I'm not aware of if there is something that the board feels like you should be getting, that be happy to work with them to get it out.
All we get weekly is like a summary, so many.
Well, last week I think it was a summary because there was a problem with the system. Do you remember?
Well, it was a training issue with the person that was taking over as they were entering.
It's been months since we've seen any sort of printout of actual activity other than just that summary.
Yeah, I think there was something attached before.
Back in February.
Well, from the iWork system, we haven't seen a report. I think that's what Peters is trying to say.
Those are available online, aren't they? To us?
Well, I can certainly make it available. Give you user IDs and you can log in and look and get your life. I mean, you're more than welcome.
Otherwise, we have to
additional
have
cost to it.
another stack of stuff generated by code enforcement that may not have anything to do with anything.
Well, so I know that he is producing, he has the capability of producing these reports. In the turnover of the land use technician, and there was some training that needed to take place. So some things were entered differently, and so they didn't pop up in the report because of some of the selection criteria. So that's why he didn't receive anything last week. But other than that, I was under the impression you were getting reports every week.
The last presentation on the iWork system, there were issues of populating certain information in different areas. I think Daria was the one that gave us the presentation, and that the person working in land use was going to populate that information and then develop a report that was going to be presented to us, and we never got that information at all. It had nothing to do with the code enforcement, but it was information that was being permitting, right. It was information on permitting and licensing and permitting, you know, how many, that kind of thing. But anyway, get back to what we're talking about is this. And I just, at the end of the year, you get so boggled down with requests and decision-making that you want to make the best one for the town of Tilton, and we've all seen what just happened in the last hour or two for taxes. It's just that I really want to make sure we're making the right decision and not 2 years from now say, oh, you know what, that wasn't really good for us.
Well, we don't have to do the web interface. It's not a requirement. We can simply do the conversion and make use of the data internally as Samerton does. It just seems as though there's a real potential benefit to the boards, different people, anybody doing any kind of research on properties. And it does seem to be the standard in this area, with the surrounding towns using it. But we don't have to do that. We can simply just do the conversion and do our updates on an annual basis, and include in the planning fees, an offset for that, so that there wouldn't be an additional cost. The thing is that if we do decide down the road to implement the web interface, they probably will not honor waiving the setup fee, because they would be doing the setup, all the setup that has to take place for that at the same time they're doing the conversion. So we'd be looking at an additional charge if we were wanting to do that later on. That's really the only thing.
So this would replace our old paper files over there.
So we would still have the ability to print.
Right, but it would, instead of that, just
Right.
nothing, we would have.
That's right. And I didn't show you.
Topo. It would print out as the topo
I
without the other layers?
don't know. how
Whatever
it
layers
comes
you
out.
turn on, I think. I don't know if the topo is the base, it's probably
It's
isn't.
not.
It shouldn't be,
I
so
don't
you can
think it
shut it off.
Yeah.
So
And-
is the base the same as what we have now?
Yes, I would think it would be. That'd
It'd
be
be
Just
like
the
your blank
lots,
tax,
just the
yeah,
lots,
like your
just
tax
the-
map showing lots and
Yeah.
maybe the roads.
Okay.
The other thing I didn't show you here was that you can literally, when you have what you want on your screen with whatever detail you have on it, you can print it, whether it's a zoomed out map or a zoomed in map. You can print those things to PDF.
Butters lists and stuff,
Yeah,
it's
that-
got a lot of
that-
use.
That
Mhm.
I think is a time saver, but
When did we first get iWorks? 3 years ago?
we encumbered originally. Oh no, that would have been. Well, we've been using it. We've been using it for 2, but we encumbered it 3 years ago.
You know, I'm looking at the tax rate, I'm looking at spending all this money. Might be better off to take that $5,500, save it, and look after next year. Let's master what we got now, as opposed to adding, more things on it.
We absolutely could.
I just haven't seen a good track record for software being implemented that fast. We're 3 years out, we're still not doing iWorks. That was promised, we better get that done the first year. That's not just
So,
I guess I don't share the same assessment, but I have to respect your opinions. If you feel as though we're not getting what we should be getting out of it. The difference with the GIS software is that we're not, it's not dependent on our manpower or activity or lack of personnel or anything else. It is completely outside of our control. This is a contracted service. So our activity is limited to my being able to update the tax cards and link those, have them in a repository where they can be linked by tax ID, and that, or parcel ID rather, and that that as we accumulate lot line adjustments or parcel information that requires changes, that those are communicated to CAI. That is the extent of our involvement. So it's not hosted by us, it's not maintained by us, there's nothing else that we do with it.
So if it's a great, I'm sorry, John.
So who's going to be editing the layers and all that? So we have to pay them to do that and add these?
That's right.
And at $80 an hour additional, over the 6,000 and the 3,000, we're still gonna pay additional $80 an hour?
If there are additional layers, so they're including layers in the conversion. Any layers that we have, they'll include. So zoning, they'll include any of the free Granite State layers, so maybe that's.
The water district,
the water district.
groundwater protection?
Yes, whatever is currently available, they will make those as layers for their maps.
So
As long as we provide them during the conversion process. If we provide them a year out from now, they're going to say, well, we're going to have to charge you for that. So if we provide it up front, then it's included.
If we include the sewer, can we ask the sewer to chip in a small percentage?
Or for their usage of
A small percentage?
if they have the whole thing now.
I suppose that's possible. I could certainly, in the time that you're taking a look at these solutions, I'd be happy to talk to the sewer administrator and get her take on how this might be beneficial.
How much they would use the program to their advantage if that layer were added into it?
Certainly find out.
Maybe water?
It occurs to me that not only are the taxpayers paying for this, but then the sewer payers are then gonna pay the taxpayers back, so those people are gonna get it twice. I'm just saying. Lockmere Village District, we're a water district, seems like that should go on the map. But is Lockmere Village District gonna pay to get on the map? Nah, I don't think so. I wouldn't imagine the sewer district would either. We're all part of the same thing.
What are you? Unless the sewer department previously has a budgeted amount for mapping or something like that, or their software, then that budget amount could be.
If
So
they
it would
wanted
change the
to
rate, but we'll have to find
go
out
in, I
from the
guess,
sewer.
yeah, or-
I would think that it would be not, I would think it would be less beneficial to Lockmere District than it would be more beneficial to the sewer.
Perhaps.
Just my thought, but, I mean, we shouldn't, the town shouldn't say, oh, we've got all these tools now, we could buy these tools, and, well, this one could use it, and this one could use it, and this one could use it. I mean, it's like you last week with the ball field. Why are we buying a ball field? So the school could use it. I mean, same thing.
Well, David, I just wanted to bring this to your attention. If we're going to do something, I would recommend that we do it prior to the end of the year so that we're not raising and appropriating new funds for this. And just to reiterate, we did budget for $5,500 for mapping in 2019. So we're a long part of the way to a type of conversion, whether it's with TerraMaps or with CAI. Or if you choose that we just continue to do what we're doing now, that's absolutely fine, and that money can roll right into the general fund.
So those are your choices. We don't go forward with that power, or we do.
Well,
Or we choose to go with this one, or we don't, or we stay with what we have, or we don't.
right, which would be continuing to pay Avatar for the manual changes.
What do we pay Avatar for those manual changes right now? Approximately.
I honestly don't know off the top of my head. It's not material. $500, $700, and that's over some period of time. We've had very few lot line adjustments. The most recent was when we purchased. I believe the most recent was when we purchased the new location, the recreational field, 132 the police company.
If we didn't pay Avatar yet for those changes, so it would actually cost us with the new one, we'd still have to pay again for those changes to be done there because they aren't on there, or we'd have to pay.
Which changes?
You just said there's a bunch of changes.
Oh, no, I'm just saying that the most recent, just so it gives you a perspective in terms of time, how often we do these. I think one of the last ones we did was the lot line adjustment with the Roman Catholic Diocese
So
for
we're up
the
to date.
land we bought. Well, whether or not we're up to date, they're including everything to bring us up to date as of April 1, 2020. That's in that $6,000. Because we have some older CAD files that they can use, and then we're going to be supplying them with information on these lot line adjustments and other things that have happened since that time.
Oh, that would be included even if it hasn't been mapped yet.
That's correct. Up through April 1st of 2020. So everything is included up through April 1st of 2020. So in any case, it's just something for you to think about. And when I will get also for you, just so that you can compare one to one, if you want to take a look at some of TerraMap's solution, and see if I can get a link for you for that. But the recommendation from the land use coordinator and I was for this particular solution.
When do you need the decision?
Well, as long as we can encumber prior to the end of the year, I would think in that December, you're going to have a lot of growth, so either the 6th or the 18th, I would think, somewhere in there. But please, open up that email I sent you, look at the client list, take a look at the proposal. There does seem to be a typo in it, which I'll look into. And but otherwise, I will be talking to you a little bit later.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sue. So, the next thing we have on the the agenda was the non-public personnel. It's pretty short, isn't it?
I didn't see that on the agenda.
Oh, I missed it.
7 o'clock.
My glasses back on.
Oh, it says selectmen's reports.
Right, so the question is do you want to do reports and have Kevin
Oh, that's good.
wait, or, and I've got, so Kevin's got a non-public, I've got three non-publics. So,
I'd rather go through so the public can stay till we're done, and then if it's gonna be non-publics, he's not hanging around to come back up.
Oh, we got the budget too to go through. No?
oh, names,
Right?
that's
later.
gonna come after the non-public.
Yeah, that's the public, that's what I said, we still have more public with the budget.
Yeah, but that's gonna after the non-public.
Well, that's good enough as to what we were saying.
So we're gonna have,
He'd rather get all the publics done first
Mhm.
and then go into non-public. That's what Peter was saying.
well, that's, so to get through all the non-publics, to all the public stuff's gonna be at least an hour and a half.
And that's unfair to Kevin.
I think we scheduled, this non-public is scheduled for 7 o'clock. That's our posted agenda. I think we should do the non-public at 7
We'll
o'clock.
probably keep it to a half hour.
The non-public?
What about the selectmen's report that was scheduled for 6:45, if we're going by our agenda?
Well, we're a captive audience.
I understand, I'm just trying not to inconvenience the public.
Well,
We don't get them here that often.
I think he
I'm
understands.
sorry, did you wait downstairs and we'll come get you?
We can,
If you're curious about the budget. Yeah, right.
It's appointed up to.
Is it not, is it personnel?
Non-public.
Make a motion to go into non-public for RSA 91A:3 personnel. Oh, I thought we were just doing Kevin's.
well, since we're not in public, I thought we'd do long,
Kevin, just real quick.
Okay. I misunderstood, go ahead.
As long as it's 15 minutes worth, because that's what the agenda
I'll
allotted.
take my motion away, go ahead, John.
We're going to non-public per RSA 91A:3, paragraph 2, A, B, and C.
Second.
So, roll call
Constantino,
vote.
yes?
Dawson, yes?
Fogg, yes?
Jessamine, yes.
Scanlon, yes.
See you guys.
We are red. Red is resume. Resume, you like that? I'd like to make a motion to seal the minutes of the non-public session as they pertain to personnel permanently
Mhm.
and as they pertain to legal issues until such time as those issues might be resolved.
Second.
Motion second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. Okay, I am first. So, I don't like bringing up old subjects, but I would like to remind everybody that that tree never lost a single limb. And I would request that somebody who voted in favor of cutting it down, think about reconsidering and pruning that tree. I think some of us here have had trees at home that we've cut branches on that felt dear to us and we've saved. It's still a strong tree. I spoke to Bob Hardy at the Conservation Commission. He said that he clearly stated that that tree could last many years and that we should plant another tree to start filling in the gap that will leave after it lasts maybe up to 20 years, is what Bob said. And I said that right, we discussed at the Conservation Commission meeting. That tree supplied great needed shade for the island to keep things pleasant for people to be there in the weddings. Any picture of that island, you see this beautiful tree. The lumber value of that, the person cutting that tree down is approximately 1,250 board feet. Rock maple, which that tree is made out of, is one of the most sought-after types of wood that's available on the market, running at $85 for, what's it called, board feet.
Board
So it's,
foot.
yeah, well, 85 cents a board foot rough, just on the log. So that's all I have to say, and I urge that at least you guys look at it, go look at the tree again, and reconsider getting it pruned. And I'd be willing to chip in some money towards getting it pruned as opposed to cut down. That's all I have to say. Thanks for listening to me harp on this.
And I would just say that if you are going to change your mind, probably should do it sooner than later because he's scheduled to cut the tree down.
When?
In December, he
Yeah.
had a short delay.
That's it. And you'll remember we don't have a selectmen's meeting next week because it's Thanksgiving. So that means we'll come back the week after.
We're not meeting Thursday night?
What's that?
We're not meeting Thursday night?
Yeah, should do your Black Thursday shopping.
How come?
Turkey dinner.
Right here.
Leftovers?
I might be really drunk, but I'll take a cab in.
So next one is Pat.
Okay, somehow about sort of in the realm of maybe 8 or 9 months ago, a year ago, we changed supplies to different towel dispensers, paper towel dispensers in Town Hall, Public Works, and the Police Department, and somehow the Senior Center got left behind. And so now they've run out of the folding paper towel dispenser,
The trifold.
the trifold, and they were told they can't order anymore because they don't use that supplier anymore. So Cindy wrote us an email and said that they can't get that because they don't have that dispenser. So can we look into getting the dispensers that everybody else has so that we can, we joined in on the buying the supplies with everybody so that we can all be on the same board. We need 4 dispensers.
Happy to check into it, but
It might have even been
Somebody-
before your time, I don't know.
well, somebody told me that they'd run out of paper towel. I called Kevin and he said he'd get it down there, so.
Well, he brought up some regular paper towels in the interim,
Oh,
and they have a trifold dispenser, and that was the old dispensers before we have these dispensers now. These are motion things on a roll, but we don't, they never replaced those up at the senior
so
center.
you need 4 at the senior center.
Mhm. And whatever paper product that they use inside of them.
The dispensers used to be free. I
Right.
actually have one in a
Yeah.
box.
Yeah.
I'd be glad to donate, if that'll help you out. But the dispensers were free.
I think they are
Paper
free, but
towels,
they're not free. Oh, they're not free?
No, they're, the ones that we have downstairs about $98 a piece.
Really?
But there's also, in a current manifest, there were a number of dispensers purchased on the Visa, on public.
Did they purchase them?
This isn't within this week, this is last month, so there must be, I'll have to check to see if those are new dispensers that are.
Well, the email came within the last week. I shared that with you, remember?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So can we check with Kevin and make sure that
Yeah, I think you'd send it to him.
whoever does it, we need the dispensers to match whatever supplies you're buying now, because
So
we,
let me bring over the dispenser and make sure that the papers, the
Is this-
towels fit in it. And you could have that one for free, and then you could send one back at $100.
they, it really needs to do that. The other thing is that we heard from Lowe's and East Coast Flooring, and they're about to go up to the senior center and do the work on the floor within the next week or two. They're contacted me to drop off the tile ahead of time so that it gets acclimated to the floor, acclimated to the room, I guess, temperature-wise. So they'll start doing that work. I thought that they were only going to do the kitchen where the subflooring was, but they're gonna do the hallway and bathrooms and office as well. So
How much extra?
it's all donated. Lowe's is donating the material and East Coast Flooring is donating the labor.
Well, that's great.
You all asked for Milestone to look to see if they could go out to one of their contractors. Correct me, Jeannie, if I'm saying this the wrong way. And Brian from Milestone sent a estimate from one of the contractors for the ball field relocation, the Tilton Police Station football field relocation. So, and he said he ran some numbers and looked at the field and the site plan. If you turn it 90 degrees, it would just barely fit in the field. It touches the swale at the top of the property line, so I don't think it would qualify for anything more than a practice field. There are also overhead wires to the west. That said, to shape, grade, loam, seed, and reset the goalposts, you're somewhere around $75,000. This does not include any irrigation, drainage, parking, tree removals to create parking, electrical, etc. And
Did he misplace a decimal point?
so we have some other people that we're going to contact too. So that's not, if you would, dead in the water. We did get some construction drawings from the Tilton Police Department, and these are them, with all the goodies in them. This is my set, if anybody would like to borrow them for an hour or two, because I need them Monday night. We're still in the process of cutting numbers and cutting things out, so that the numbers can, cutting things out so the numbers can go down. That's where we're at with that. CBA met Wednesday. We shared proposals the 2 weeks prior to, and then we agreed on a couple of minor languages, and we're going to meet again the 27th. So just minor language things that we agreed on, and the 27th we'll be looking at wages and health insurance when we get into the nitty-gritty of a lot of the negotiations, and that's when we start including you folks in and saying, here's where we're at, folks. This is what they want. Okay? I think that's it.
Everyone.
You're in luck. I only have one thing.
In
So I was-
12 parts.
Time's up.
Not supposed to tell. So I was informed today that there is a problem on Bittern Lane. The empty tractor is blocking the lower part of Bittern Lane shortly after you go past their first entrance. Sounds like they have concrete blocks out there. And there is a hydrant down there that the water district has to access when they're flushing, and et cetera, et cetera. They've had some problems because they're also using that section of the road as a parking lot for equipment. So technically, it is still a public road. It only goes to their property, but technically, they should not be blocking the public road. And the water district should be able to have access to the hydrant, so can we contact them or PD or however you think we should do it?
I drove down there, and you could go in through Agway, you could go into the MV tractor, and then went a little more, and it just stopped where it always did stop.
It doesn't stop until probably,
I mean, that's where there used to be, like, the whole road changed into, I think, dirt or.
Well, but
Yeah.
so the actual boundary is, if you go past the MV tractor property, where it's landscaped, I believe there's a swale coming down, approximately in that area.
All the way down along the pond?
Yes. It really, their property begins, as you get down there and it starts to drive up. I mean, I'd have to take it, show you on a map.
Yeah, you took a ride down there, so
But,
take a ride down there.
You heard this the other day,
Yeah.
it sent out messages.
Yeah, and see, it always seemed to be where it always had been blocked when I took a drive down there.
well, I don't know about blocked or just not improved. And I just, so that
All right, so
hydrant is,
impassable is.
yeah,
You can't block a town road.
yeah.
If they're blocking off the entrance to that back property, that's their land, and they
That's
can
their
do
land,
whatever
they
they
can do what
want
they
to do.
want.
And they have to allow utilities to get in to do.
Exactly.
If they had a pole and the electric guys gotta get back there, they have to be able to get back their water. And I imagine there's sewer a part of that road.
It's private sewer, I believe. I'm not, we're
So
not
can
positive,
somebody
I
go
explained
take
to
a look?
Johanna briefly.
That know, somebody that's knowing of exactly where, go take a look to make sure before we, not going.
I can go down tomorrow morning.
Because it's hard to determine where, what.
I can go down and look tomorrow morning and see if it's still there.
Still accessible.
Yeah.
Is it permanently or is it just blocked at night?
Blocked at night, from
Yeah,
what I
no.
understand.
During the day, because that's when they flush their hydrants, they couldn't get to it, because of the equipment parked all around it.
Because what I noticed was where it seemed like the road ended before, you know, the paved section, and
Right.
it was no longer passable. At that point, they had their tractors parked all the way from there.
So, and
down.
even
But I thought
so,
that's where the end of the road ended.
even so, their site plan, there shouldn't be equipment parked off that lot up there. There's two places, according to the site plan, where they could park equipment. On their parking lot at their existing, and at their parking lot up at their new storage facility.
They've been parking right along the side of the street.
Right where that road
for
was
years.
is where they parked.
Well, that's, they
And
can't,
in those
that's not,
trees there.
that's not part of their site plan. But I'll go look tomorrow, and sorry, I'll call Judy and let her
Yeah,
know
I
whatever.
mean, I took a look, I'm not as knowledgeable of road. It's dark. No chains or blocks, so.
It's like Joe said, they want to block off their entrance to their new property, they could do, absolutely, no problem. And I find them to be very cooperative. So, I mean, usually it's just a phone call, this has been reported to us, would you, and they go right out and take care of it. They're very good about that.
That's good.
And I'm
Ian?
good.
So you're all done, Catherine?
I am, thank you.
Mark your calendars, Saturday, December 7th, the Tilton Annual Christmas Parade. Formation begins 3:30 p.m. at Union Sanborn School in Northfield. Parade departs there following the typical parade route at 4. They will drop Santa off at Riverfront Park shortly thereafter. He'll be there till around 6, at which point the fireworks begin. And then my other part for tonight is, Jeannie, could we just check on the post for Sherwood Drive, the Walmart, that island? That's it.
So Peter,
Yep.
can you explain to me again where exactly you're talking about?
The intersection of Sherwood Drive and East Main Street, you're facing AutoServe. If you're coming out of Sherwood, to your left is an island. Right at the end of the island, the post that shows you how to avoid the island has been knocked down.
Okay.
So that's all, it's a new sign,
Okay.
which I don't know if he
That's
picked it up.
Stavertown.
Huh?
Is that Stavertown?
It's on the island on Sherwood, so how wide is the DOT? I'm assuming it's ours.
Going into Sherwood Drive, there's a divider.
That's,
Okay, the divider
Yeah.
doesn't have its directional sign, stay to the right or
Yeah.
whatever. See Chili's, right? Because the other street is Sherwood Drive.
yeah, sure.
This is Tilton. And you're going up towards exit 20. And there's a like auto service right there.
Oh, okay.
And you want to make a left into here. But there should be a directional sign, one of these.
In these dark, wet nights, it's fun trying to
You can't
avoid
see
it.
anything, and you can't see this.
And it's not painted yellow either to help you, so.
That's not Chili's,
That's
this
what-
is Sherwood.
that's what-
Well, whatever this
That's
is.
Bank of New, no, that's Bank of
TD
America?
Bank.
TD
TD
Bank
Bank.
North. This is TD Bank North. And this is Northway Bank.
Yeah.
And this is
Where's the
Walmart.
Chili's?
Chili's is.
Over
Yeah,
here.
the yellow
off
plaza.
of
Not way
Lowe's.
down in Tilton.
No, it's off of Lowe's.
Okay, whatever it is, you know where we're talking.
That's what was. I know, I'm looking at this.
It's somewhere in Tilton.
You're right, it is a bank, it is a bank. But that's where it is.
Got it.
Thank you.
And my mind flipping.
Yeah,
All yours, John.
Not a hard
Lowe's Drive, Lowe's Drive.
That's it.
Same.
There you go.
Yeah,
You know, see,
and look, this one even has the sign.
Darn, you didn't get the
That's
picture
been
of the
knocked
car
down.
knocking it over.
Google. That'd be great.
One more reason to love Google.
You stay to the right of the sign, but the sign's gone.
to reflect.
When you make a left turn coming from Tilton,
Kevin will know what it is.
Kevin will know.
This is what he's talking about, right?
No, I think that's the street sign.
Look, this is, there should be.
It would
a
be on the
direction.
island
Keep to
between the
right.
two lanes.
Keep to the right
It
side.
may have the street sign on it too.
It might have a street sign, even this will help, because you gotta keep to the right.
So something's.
He'll be able to see where the old post was because it got sheared
That
off.
post is gone, it got sheared off.
Happened in there.
The guy did it, broke his.
It's here, not Chili's.
All right.
Did you break your CD shaft?
Yeah, right, almost in your yard.
So,
Broke the axle.
Anything
right in
else?
half.
to come before the Board of
Hold on,
Selectmen
hold on,
this
there's
evening.
one more name on that list, I think. After Peter was Joe Jessup.
Pat told me to try and skip over you.
Yeah, well, we'll talk about that. Threw her right under the school bus.
She didn't.
You done, Peter?
Yes.
All right. There was a co-op meeting last night in Bow. The budgets were approved. Tilton was elected to the operating committee, and I was in turn elected to the secretary position. So that's done. There's a $1.5 million offer pending on the property that we own adjacent to the
Quick, sell it.
incinerator. The incinerator, Wheelabrator has a right, not of first refusal, but a right of first offer. So they have 90 days, which has been set into motion, to come up with an offer for us.
Do you have to accept said offer?
And we don't have to accept the offer. However, what the interesting part of this is that the $1.5 million offer, although made sincerely, I have no doubt, there's no way they would pay $1.5 million for that property. I know what the assessment is. And we paid $2 million for the property, which is what the 1.5 is based on. But wait until they do some due diligence. So if Wheelabrator really wants that property at $750,000, that sounded like a really good deal, even though that would be well over $1 million in loss for the property. I would explain to you certainly all the intricacies of why that property was a turkey, not a piece of property, but in the interest of brevity, I'll pass. I will say that they're putting up, and get a little, Cliff Buswell. You remember Cliff Buswell?
Yeah.
He was so intent on trying to get him to do something about Silver Lake. Ray Burton worked on it. I met with Jeannie Forrester at Cliff Buswell's house. What a thing that was. But be that as it may, the state is in the process of putting up some kind of a thing up there, a blinking light, or I don't know exactly what, because I hate to take a detour down Brook Road, but they're definitely putting something up at that intersection. So I want to say thank you, Cliff Boswell. On December 7th, while you have your calendars out from Peter's Christmas parade, in the morning, the Christmas breakfast at the Pines is happening. Come on down. It's all you can eat for cheap money. And I personally will be making French toast sticks. So that'll be yummy. I believe that begins at 8. So come on down, see you then. And I am done.
That's it.
The town administrators report.
Budget,
No, I want to go before him.
okay.
I'll be quick. He's not quick. So, under action items, timetable, Mabel. I did talk to the attorney. They estimate to do the transfer paperwork on that would be about $1,500. Just want to make sure you're okay with that. I am getting a quote for a bronze plaque, and I should have that soon, but I was hoping you'd authorize the legal expense for the transfer.
What do we get for our
Joe?
What do we get for our $1,500 from
All
these
the,
shysters?
Title, yeah, the timetable maple, the actual property, so they'll
The
do the research.
$1,500 doesn't go to the Rogers, it goes to lawyers.
Yes.
What do we get for the
The
legal
title.
fees?
The title research, all the paperwork, everything that needs to do to convey the property. The closing costs, all that.
Okay.
All right. Second thing is DTC proposed, if you remember a while back, to represent multiple communities in creating a comprehensive ordinance regulating access to public rights of way for wireless facilities. And I'd given you all that information back in August. You asked me at that time to find out what it would cost. The cost per community is estimated to be under $1,000. They have sent us a contract for your signature. If you want to sign it, I put in lines for everyone. You may want to just look at it and come back in the next meeting, but wanted to get it in front of you. I can't tell you that whether it makes a difference or not. Mary, we joined it, so.
Who's read this agreement?
I have. I'm not a lawyer.
One of the reasons I like it.
Thank you. So, outstanding senior center pipe relocation project. We did get the other bid in. Pat provided that. I'll pass those out. So that price for that is $600+. But just wanted to bring this up one more time because I recall at some point hearing a conversation from all of you that once all the insulation work got taken care of, that perhaps there wasn't a need to do anything with the pipes. The pipes had never frozen before up until the point that that work had been done a year or so ago and it was not put back to the way it was supposed to be put back, so it was left open to the air. That was the reason that it caused the pipes to freeze. So that's the question to you is, now that John has done all this work, do you need to do this additional work if the pipes never froze before?
I have a question. Oh, no, you, I'm
Just
Go
let
ahead.
you know what I did, what I saw. When I went in there, yes, there was excessive amounts of missing insulation dangling down. There were gaps in the rocks, some of them as big as 4 inches open on the side facing Bedard's property. Our buddy over there. And so wind was blowing in there. When they replaced or damaged pipes or did some plumbing under there, they ran those pipes below the insulation in the unheated area. And so those are still exposed, but the walls are not leaking like they were before, and the floor is insulated. So I'll let anybody else make that decision.
Do you think we need to move them, Joe?
Personally, if it was my house, I would move them inside, just because to not have to worry about it again. But that's, you know, it also involves aesthetics inside the building, because you will have pipes that are exposed that will have to be boxed in. So that's the other consideration.
So I came across this email today from February 14th, 2019. And it's from a plumber that went in there, I don't know who that is, and looked at it, and he says, well, I was down there, I didn't feel much of a draft, it's hard to offer to fix something if the issue has been resolved. I have admitted that aspect from my proposal with relocating pipes. This plumber is recommending that we don't need to do this, relocate the pipes, but we do need to make it winter tight and airtight. So is it airtight? Because how long has the senior center been there?
It'll be 10 years next May.
So in 10 years, it froze once. That was right after we...
Under the kitchen it's froze once.
Right, we'd had some work done, and that the insulation wasn't put back, and it wasn't sealed up.
And there were quite a few air gaps that John has since sealed up.
Well,
Quite
I
a
would
few.
vote no. No, if it's winterized and the air gaps are sealed up, no. Half of my house sits on crawl space. And my pipes freeze when I neglect to insulate one small area of my foundation outside. Other than that, and there's no heat in my basement, none. Absolutely none, zero heat. So,
I can say, you know, I sealed it up really good, but I don't want anybody to say, John, you missed a spot, the pipe froze up. But I did a really good job
I'm
on
sure you
insulating
did.
those, and I
I'm sure you're
patched a
very
lot of
thorough.
holes and took a lot of debris out of there, and I insulated the floor so that you know, you wouldn't have a cold floor. But like I said, the pipes were mounted about 2 inches below the insulation in that crawl space. So, and that's,
and I think somebody told me, or did I read in here, that there's electrical tapes?
Yeah. Was that the February 27th email?
there are no electrical tapes
February
on
14th.
anything other than the supply line
Okay.
there.
So my vote would be no. I think it's a waste of money. I think John's done a great job sealing it up. Yeah. We've got a reason for it freezing, and John's fixed it, and I think it's a waste of money.
In the other part of it, it used to freeze all the time. There was Al went in there, and remember, I don't know how many times he went in there and found different reasons for it to freeze. We fixed it, we put heat tape on it. Not only did we put heat tape on it, but the executive committee actually had the electrician wire out in the hallway so that we can just turn it on automatically. And we haven't had an incident since then for all of that freezing going on in the little cubby hole underneath the water pipe.
And it didn't freeze last week
And
during that exceptionally cold spell where we set records.
Right.
And there's no snow to insulate.
Right. And the only time that we've ever had any freezing whatsoever in the kitchen was when we had work underneath the kitchen and that little window was left uninsulated. Each and every time highway has to go in there for any reason, there's a lot of insulation around the window itself. That was all left unbeknownst to us, left undone. There was a lot of air gaps, there was insulation down, so there was a reason for it to freeze for sure.
I think your work, John, has been tested with that cold spell.
Peter?
I do too.
Well, since John's done such good work, we could look at, you've got the systems where you have the little thermostat tied to a light bulb where it drops below your set point and the little red light comes on so you know that you're getting a cold air. You know, people do it in their homes if they go for vacation in the winter, the neighbor knows the furnace is off, they can check it. We could possibly do that as a backup to what John's done, probably a lot cheaper. There's a thermostat set, and you've got a bulb tied to it so that it drops below your set point. So you set it for 50. So as it drops below 50, it turns the light on, and the red light will either solid or flashing, however you do it. Potato houses in Maine do it too, because this time of year they're not even heating. You'll see doors open because the potatoes are generating heat. They don't heat till January-ish. And so they'll have a light so that people see the light, now they'll hit the farmer's house.
So, you're awake. I guess that's what,
Okay,
Joe,
so,
Joe, do you have anything to say?
I vote no.
Okay,
okay, so it's a no.
I'll wait on my shoulders then.
No, you've done good work, John.
You've
You're
done
a
good.
God, don't worry about it.
So we will not proceed with doing anything with the pipes, but to follow up to Peter's suggestion, is that something you want me to look into, or are we good with the way it is?
Say let go.
I said, let's try it this winter.
Okay,
We can do it.
Give me a call if it freezes, I'll take the heat a little bit
do I
there.
have consensus?
Yes.
All right. And then one other thing I wanted to mention, and then I'll be done, unless you have any questions for me. So you recall a while back, you gave me the authority to write a grant application to LCHIP for building assessment for town hall. We did get notified that we were successful in the grant application. It gives us the authority up to, they will match up to $19,350 of whatever it is we think we want to do. So they are having a ceremony at the State House Executive Council on December 4th, where they will be presenting the grants. Now this is, just so you know, you don't have to accept the grant. If I'm still working on the building assessment, I want to lower the price because this is a matching grant. I'm going to bring it down a little bit, or a lot bit, because I don't want to match $19,000 for a building assessment. So if it doesn't work, we don't have to accept it, but we have received the grant.
Nice job.
So
Very
for
nice
building assessment, what do you plan on doing with it?
Well, they would be looking at the whole building in terms of the reporting, the exterior, the inside of the building, structural integrity of the building, that sort of thing. They did, and I can get you a copy of what they did for the Tilton Mansion, which was a building assessment, and that's what I think we should do here. It's, if you remember, it started out looking at repointing, and after discussion with LCHIP, they said maybe you should, given the age of the building, you should look at the whole building. So I don't know if anyone wants to go down, if anyone's available.
December
What's
4th?
the date? At what time?
December 4th.
That's a Friday?
No,
It's
Wednesday.
the 7th is a Saturday, so back it up.
It's a Wednesday.
Catherine wants to go
10
down.
o'clock in the morning.
10 o'clock?
10 o'clock in the morning.
Call my boss.
I can go at 10 o'clock. Well, that's when it starts. Leave her in there.
Cramps my
Will it
style.
last long?
Hope not.
10 o'clock in the morning.
So did we actually authorize the legal expense for Timetable Maple?
I thought we did.
Just want to make sure. Now, I'm okay with it, but maybe I was crying so much I didn't hear that. $1,500.
Yeah.
Okay, and what about the DTC $1,000 right-of-way ordinance? That's approximately 5 hours of lawyer time. And I don't think a lawyer is gonna write us an ordinance any other way for $1,000. I've worked with Kate Miller, Catherine Miller. She was the lead attorney in our group that put together the MetroPass contract and got us the grant that paid for all our wiring here at Town Hall. And I think that it cost us $1,200 for that over the course of the thing. I have nothing but good things to say about that, as I was the representative on that board. And I would suggest personally going for the $1,000.
Did you say you had good things to say about an attorney?
I have good things to say about the experience.
Okay.
The town of Tilton, the attorney sucked, but the town of Tilton, well, no, they divert things and they don't, you ask them a question, should be yes or no, but is it? No. Never yes or no. The experience turned out good for us, and if we have to do something about the ordinance in order to tax
Date it back
the
October
equipment.
14th.
I'm a yes.
They wanted to know by September, I believe, if
No.
you get to the back
Yeah,
end
no,
originally.
I had already told them that.
Well, I would be a yes.
Yes.
Basically, what they wanted to know was, is this something that we were interested in pursuing? And I had asked you the first time, and you said yes. We'll go back and find out what it was going to be. They came back with 1,000.
And I just read the contract,
This is for the
it's pretty
poles?
standard.
Wireless communication and other public.
You mean they're not liable for anything?
Oh, hell no. No, it's about the ordinance, we have to have the proper ordinance in order to tax the poles. So, this is a step in getting the revenue for the town.
I'd ask Leanne to look at it too, because.
Yeah, so when you tax the wireless, then our MetroCast goes up.
Wireless and MetroCast are two different things. MetroCast is not wireless.
Consolidated.
Internet is.
Where? MetroCast doesn't do wireless, they're cables and cable TV and cable internet access. They have wires that go into your house. You have a modem, then it becomes wireless, I guess, but we can't tax modems. But those wires all around,
Xfinity and Verizon and all of them, right?
the actual physical plant involved with
Call
it.
the question.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? So moved.
There you go. Tell Kate I said hey.
Well,
That's it.
now you got Tim.
Oh, is that
Budget.
why he's here?
Budgeted.
Make him wait all night.
This is just gonna be a listening.
Come on now.
I'll tell you.
So you're gonna be bitterly disappointed because based on events earlier, this is outdated. I tried to get the chair's attention so I could leave earlier, but this is fine. We can-
How much of it is outdated?
All of it?
You're not punishing us.
I see something in red already.
So just very briefly, you're looking at the soon-to-be revised land use budget, and primarily because of the first two lines regarding salary information and revising the hours and pay for the land use technician. So that's the major change to this, and also, as you can see, that top line. So I may ask for these back, just so they're not floating around, and the employee is concerned about this would be, picking this up. In any event, most notably, the section in red refers to the alternate stipends down below there, which last year you denied or removed that when you voted the selectmen's budget for that particular line for the Conservation Commission, but I did want to note that for you. Also,
Why did you put it in there for us this year if we denied it?
What you're looking at here is the request. So that's what the Conservation Commission requested. I flagged it because you had not
They put it in
permitted it
again
last
this year.
They did.
Can I ask a question on that, please? Or while we're on it? How many, do the alternates attend the meetings every week? Do we know that?
Yes.
At least one of them does.
At least one of them does.
Kathy.
She's an alternate.
She's an alternate. She doesn't want to be on the committee. She's always been the alternate.
And so we have an alternate that goes every single week, every meeting.
She's also the secretary for the committee.
Oh, she gets paid for being a secretary?
Yes.
That's right.
That's right.
Okay, so we have we have two alternates, one attends every single meeting. Last year we voted no alternates. The Conservation is the only committee that has alternates.
No.
Oh, no.
No.
Planning Board has alternates, they don't get paid.
So
According to our
we don't
last.
pay alternates. The problem is we can't prorate it, evidently. So you have one committee where the alternates attend. Well, it's a secretary, they get paid to attend.
But
So what do you do with the other committees where the alternates don't attend, but there's alternates?
But isn't it a requirement of law in the Planning Board that the alternate attend to replace if the regular person doesn't show up?
No, they can get called in.
They can get called in. And
When a member of a board doesn't show up, they're supposed to call beforehand, otherwise they can be removed.
But wasn't there a time when you sat on that board that there was a gentleman that didn't show up quite a few times and there was an alternate that took his place and he got paid for the stipend?
Oh, I don't remember. I know
I think he did get paid for the stipend.
There were two members that, this was years ago.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. That didn't show. We went, the Board of Selectmen actually went through a process to remove them. And did not. And now they both still attended planning board meetings.
I know which one you're talking about. I'm talking about another one that didn't attend in
Was the
this
gentleman who lived on, they
Yeah.
both lived on Clark,
clock, right? Yep,
but they ended up, after that,
yep,
trying to remove them. They did attend.
okay. All right, so this is kind of interesting.
So in any event, one other thing I'll point out to you here, because it doesn't make a lot of sense to spend a lot of time on this until those top lines are finalized. And that's, keep in mind, that's also going to change some of the tax lines in the administrative budget. But the last item there, economic development, we're planning on encumbering the $6,000 from 2019 and then just budgeting $2,000 for the next year. And Jeannie is working on the application for that.
So the increase is for the charrette?
It's a decrease. So it's $2,000 for next year. It was $6,000
But it's
this
a
year.
total of 8,000, so it would have been an increase. So you'll have 8,000 next year. You'll have 6,000 from this year and
Correct.
2,000 from next year.
It
So
cost
it's
$8,000, yeah.
Yeah, because
So
the
it's eight-
charrette costs $6,000
So why the extra 2,000?
for science. Is that right? The downtown
Economic
parking signs?
development activities in downtown.
So
So,
that's generic. I wanted more
well,
specific signage improvements. Okay.
so specifically, I think I'm pretty sure I talked to y'all about the signage, the old signs, white signs that said public parking, so.
Yep. So that's what this extra two grand would do, okay.
So overall, there's going to be a reduction in this particular budget due to the personnel change. And then lastly, there will be a change in the Public Works budget to account for a change in medical plans that is not currently budgeted.
So are your blue salary lines good to go, or are they gonna get tweaked?
They're going to get tweaked. The top line in particular.
That's what I was looking at, thanks.
Yeah, because that was done in anticipation. So
The top two lines, right?
well, the second line is budgeted for 16 hours a week at $16.50.
We don't know, we don't know that though. That's an unknown.
Well, we don't have a candidate.
Correct.
That's correct.
So that's unknown.
But it is, it's in keeping with what our...
We know what we want to pay.
It's in keeping with the person that we had here for a little over 2 years.
Depends on experience.
Right.
Okay.
So otherwise, I won't bore you with the rest of it, and I am going to be providing the Budget Committee with a draft budget of department heads tomorrow, so I'm sending that off to them. And
So why would you be boring us with the budget that we have to approve? I really want to go through the budget. I don't want to end up rubber stamping a budget that you present to us. And I know it's late, but we've literally spent less than 5 minutes on the land use budget. And I get that the salary portion is going to change, but I feel like I'm rushing through something that I'm going to rubber stamp, and I'm not rubber stamping the budget.
no, it's just that next week, Leanne, or on the 6th, Leanne will be here, the land use coordinator, and I thought maybe it'd be more appropriate to review the budget at that time.
Okay.
The primary purpose for having it before you was to see the reduction in the second line there.
And when do we get to review the entire budget with you in its entirety?
You don't?
On the, I've gone through once quickly, twice,
Quickly.
a little more
Yeah,
time. Then we've gone through each departmental budget.
right.
And then I'm happy to go through again. I have found areas and worked with the department heads to reduce lines in order to bring us down to a flat budget. That may change slightly due to a change in what I was anticipating for the 150th committee and also for the health insurance and public works. So I have to see how that's going to shake out. But otherwise, we're very close to a flat budget.
I don't know how to say this without,
So I'd be happy to be before the Board of Selectmen at the next opportunity for at least, I would say, an hour and a half to go through the entire budget in its entirety, once again, and review any of those changes. There are some, I'm recommending reducing the legal expense line because of the nature of the types of challenges that we'll have this next year. I think that's going to be less than what we've experienced in the past because most of those challenges have come from the commercial industrial area.
Yeah, but we've never had a hit like this on the residential.
No, but it is, in discussing it with our assessor and looking at history, it would appear that it is, while there's a lot of consternation that for that to go to fruition to where we would have to expend legal fees such as Cunningham, we wouldn't be hiring Cunningham to do an appraisal on a residential home, support values, so our expenses should be less. And I'm not talking about a huge reduction, but throughout the budget I went through, and as I said, with the exception of administration, because that's really the town administrators and your, one of your major areas, there were a few changes in there, and but I'm trying to get it to where it's flat. And that also included some things that I know that the board will take out, that is taken out every single year, from outside agencies. So there's still more money that will probably come out of the budget. So it's entirely possible we can have a flat budget. And that included things like the GIS software that you saw. So if you opt not to do that, that would also be less money still. And then finally, I mentioned a few weeks ago to you the work that I needed to do on Veterans Day. That was very successful, but it wasn't complete. We weren't able to get everything done we needed to do. So right now the schedule is to be here on Black Friday.
Thanksgiving? I figured it'd come on Turkey Day.
I know, and I'm not crazy about it, but we've been working with Avatar to move, and we've run into a few hiccups. We've been trying for days now to get some software moved from one server instance to another, and we finally got that done, got everything ready for that to happen today. So with the new server levels, new server licenses, and then over at the PD, the same kind of thing. We've got some work to do there. That won't occur on Black Friday, but the rest of the migration here will. So in lieu of taking that holiday, I will find another day to take off before the end of the year. So anyway, thanks very much.
Yes, that's a yes for me.
Oh, you want these back?
Yes.
Do you,
if you would.
do you have time to take off that time before the end of the year, or can you just carry it over?
I have to take care of some family business in New York, so I'll find the time.
Anything else come before the Board of Selectmen this evening?
Any questions?
No? Fine, thank you.
Fascinating, isn't it?
The one little announcement you're probably going to make, I wanted to.
Yeah, I do have an announcement.
Not now, later.
Just that we have hired Stephen Kelly to work for the Public Works Department to replace the employee that's no longer with us. Welcome aboard. Welcome, Stephen. And
Hopefully this is the start of a long and fruitful relationship.
He's got great recommendations. Our Public Works Director has interviewed him and gets along great with the guys. And I think we're doing good. Joe?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Oh, no, stay here. That's all right. I got it.
Do you want to take a look at the plans?
And that's all.